Chapter 127. The next day, although the window was facing the west and the sun couldn't be seen, the cheerful chirping of birds outside the window was already announcing the beginning of a new day. On the big bed in the second bedroom, a sleeping beauty was curled up on her side. Her long hair was quietly spread out on the pillow, and her soft lips were slightly pursed, as if she was waiting for her prince to kiss her awake. Murphy's eyelashes were very long, and Shishi's eyelashes were very similar to her mother's. She had inherited many of Murphy's good looks, but Shishi's big eyes were inherited from her father. They were very cute. The chirping of the birds outside the window was too noisy. Murphy's eyelashes trembled, and she slowly opened her eyes. After a night of rest, Murphy's fever had subsided. Although her body was still a little weak, her spirit was much better than yesterday. After rubbing her eyes in a daze, Murphy began to come back to her senses, and memories came flooding back like a tide. Yesterday he carried me here. Murphy recalled the scene last night, and she felt her face become a little hot. She was really blushing this time. She hurriedly lifted the quilt and looked inside. Her clothes were still neat, but they were a little wrinkled after sleeping for a night. Last night, when Yang-yi carried her back, he didn't offend the beauty at all. He didn't take the initiative to change her clothes. This discovery made Murphy's good impression of Yang-yi rise a lot. She was actually very traditional, and Yang-yi's gentlemanly behavior was something she could accept. It made her feel very comfortable and warm in her heart. Ouch! Murphy turned over and sat up from the quilt. After sleeping for more than 10 hours, although her head was awake, her body was sore. She sat up and stretched her body. Murphy's figure was very good. The thin shirt couldn't cover the ups and downs of her breasts. This stretch of her body was very big. Not only did the bones in her body crack, but the shirt that was pushed up high also couldn't support the top button. Murphy quickly fastened the buttons back with a red face. Fortunately, there was no one else in the room. Just as she thought of this, Murphy suddenly noticed that there was a chair beside the bed. On it was a neatly folded towel. At the head of the bed, there was a basin of water and a towel hanging on the edge of the basin. He spent the whole night with me. Murphy was stunned. Yang-yi had indeed spent the night with Murphy. After drinking the medicine, Murphy's fever didn't go down quickly, and her forehead was burning up. Yang-yi poured a basin of cold water and used a cold towel to cool down Murphy's forehead. He had to change the towel every once in a while. This took a long time. Later on, although Murphy's condition stabilized, Yang-yi was not confident. He was worried that it would relapse, so he moved a chair and sat beside Murphy's bed to watch over her for the whole night. Of course, Murphy didn't know all the details, but looking at all these, she could roughly guess. She pursed her lips. Although she wasn't good at expressing her emotions, Murphy could clearly feel that her heart was really stirred by these scenes. After getting off the bed, Murphy tidied up her messy hair and tidied her clothes before pushing open the bedroom door. Just then, she saw Yang-yi wearing an apron and setting the dining table. Yang-yi didn't go for his morning exercise. He woke up early and tidied up the housework that he didn't have time to do last night. Then he prepared breakfast in the kitchen. Murphy didn't eat much last night before going to bed. She must be very hungry this morning. Good morning. Murphy and Yang-yi's eyes met, and she lowered her head shyly. She had just woken up, her face hadn't been washed, her hair was messy, and she was still wearing yesterday's clothes. She must be in a mess, right? Murphy suddenly cared about these things. Good morning. Yang-yi put down the bowl in his hand and gently smiled. Do you feel better now? Yes, I feel better, Murphy said softly. However, this feeling was still a little strange. Murphy was still not used to speaking softly like a kitten in front of Yang-yi. Thinking that she hadn't washed up, she quickly waved her hand and went back to the master bedroom. Murphy was actually a clean person. After taking a bath and changing her clothes, she came out of the master bedroom. At this time, Shishi had already smelled the fragrance of breakfast. She got up from the bed and ran to her father's side to ask for food. When Shishi saw Murphy come out, she dropped the small spoon in her hand, jumped down from the chair, and happily ran to her mother's side to ask for a hug. "Have you washed up?" Murphy asked softly. "If you don't brush your teeth in the morning, you can't eat." "Yes, Papa also helped me wipe my face." She had a lot to say to her mother, so she hurriedly answered and then began to chatter. "Mom, you don't know, she was so worried about you yesterday." The little girl's grammar was slightly wrong. After all, she was still young. Mom was very happy. How was she worried about Mom? Murphy asked softly. At this time, Yang-yi smiled and handed over a cup of warm water. He signaled with his eyes that he wouldn't interrupt the conversation between the mother and daughter. Murphy got up early in the morning and was busy tidying up her personal image. She didn't have time to drink water, but she was really thirsty. She took a few sips. The warm water immediately moistened her dry throat. It was very comfortable. She said very seriously. She was worried about Mom yesterday. "I didn't watch cartoons and I didn't ask Papa to tell me stories. I took care of Mom with Papa. Fortunately, Mom didn't have a fever. She was really afraid that Mom would get sick. She was really obedient last night. Later she fell asleep by herself. She was very brave." Yang-yi also praised his daughter with a smile. She heard her father's praise and happily puffed out her small chest as if to say, "Yes, such a good child is me. Mom is very touched. Thank you, Shishi, who loves Mom so much." Murphy smiled and kissed her daughter's pink face. After Murphy recovered, she had been moved by Yang-yi's care. Now, she was in a good mood because of the caring care of her little baby. After Murphy recovered, she officially moved into Yang-yi's house. However, in her words, they weren't living together, but she had brought Shishi over for a vacation. Well, Yang-yi didn't care about this. However, with one more woman in the house, life became more colorful. Originally, Yang-yi's life was, when his daughter wasn't around, he would listen to music and wipe the coffee cup in the coffee shop alone for the whole day. When his daughter was around, Yang-yi listened to his daughter's chatter, answered her endless questions and told her stories. The day passed by peacefully. Now with Murphy, Yang-yi's daily life seemed to be different. For example, Murphy cared more about the decoration of the house, and she always felt that Yang-yi didn't know how to live. How can there be no flowers at home? Looking around, there are only monotonous and boring colors. You have to get some flowers and put them in a bottle to add some color to your life, Murphy said seriously. Chapter 128. Murphy wasn't a hard-working and virtuous woman. Just by looking at the nanny in her house, it was obvious that she didn't know how to tidy up the room. When Murphy woke up in the morning, Yang-yi returned to the second bedroom and saw that although she had folded the quilt, it was almost the same as if she hadn't folded it. Either there was a small tail here and there, or there was a dent in the edges and corners. So, Yang-yi folded the quilt again and pulled the sheets. However, in terms of quality of life, Murphy was more meticulous than Yang-yi. After all, she was a woman. Yang-yi scratched his head and said, "There are quite a lot of flowers in the garden downstairs. Do you want me to go and pick a few? Those are wild flowers. Compared to the artificially cultivated flowers in the flower shop, whether it's the variety, color, or size, there is a big difference." Murphy was speechless. "Since you want to arrange flowers, how can you just make do with it? You go and buy it, I'll do it." Murphy waved her hand coolly and ordered. Alright, of course Yang-yi had to go and buy it. Murphy's face was still easy to recognize. But where could he buy it? Yang-yi walked out of the door and then remembered that he hadn't bought any flowers. But he thought of a flower shop. Yen Xiaopei said that she opened a flower shop at the East Gate. He was magnanimous and didn't have any grudges. He didn't care and went straight to the East Gate and found the flower shop. "Hey Yang-yi." As soon as Yang-yi walked through the door, Yen Xiaopei recognized him. After all, there weren't many men who could ignore her beauty all these years. Seeing Yang-yi, Yen Xiaopei's heart still had some ripples. It wasn't that she still couldn't forget Yang-yi, but if she didn't get it, she would always feel reluctant. But after all, he was an adult and there were students working part-time in the shop. Yan Xiaopei smiled and greeted him normally. "Hello." Yang Yi smiled and nodded at her before saying, "Miss Yan, I'd like to buy some flowers." So he came to buy flowers. And Yan Xiaopei knew that Yang Yi definitely didn't buy them for her. Yan Xiaopei remembered the more beautiful woman that Yang Yi's daughter had mentioned. "What kind of flowers do you want to buy? We have roses here, Chinese roses, lilies." Although Yan Xiaopei felt a little sour in her heart, she still said it as if nothing had happened. Yang Yi scratched his head. He really didn't know what to buy. He had an idea and said, "Why don't you pick a few of each for me? Pick the prettier ones." Not to mention the other girls in the shop, even Yan Xiaopei was stunned. Who would buy flowers like this? "Do you really want to buy it like this? If I pick them all, I'm afraid there will be dozens of them." Yan Xiaopei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Dozens of flowers were not considered a lot. Those rich people who spent money to buy beautiful girls' flowers would buy dozens or even hundreds of flowers. However, Yan Xiaopei had been running a flower shop for a few years, and she had never seen anyone buy dozens of flowers of a variety. "It's okay. I'll buy it like this," Yang Yi said with certainty. "Xiao Luo." Yan Xiaopei helplessly called a part-time girl and said to her, "Help Mr. Yang pick the flowers. He's my friend. Pick the best ones for him." While Yang Yi was picking flowers, an elegantly dressed man walked in with a bouquet of bright red roses in his hand. Yes, he came to the flower shop with flowers. "Xiaopei, are you free tonight? I want to invite you to Binhai for dinner and then go for a ride." The man affectionately handed the flowers to Yan Xiaopei. Naturally, Yan Xiaopei's pursuer wasn't the only one who talked to her like this. In order to get rid of her disappointment, Yan Xiaopei also accepted his pursuit. The man's temperament fascinated Yan Xiaopei. Although there was a big difference between him and Yang Yi, it seemed that this man was better. In addition to Xiao Luo, who was accompanying Yang Yi, there were two part-time girls who snickered and whispered on the side. "Tonight, me see." Yan Xiaopei couldn't help but raise her voice slightly and said in a reserved manner, "I'll send Kai to my mom's place. I'm still free." After that, she glanced at Yang Yi. However, the latter didn't react at all. He was still excitedly asking Xiao Luo the name of the flowers. Yan Xiaopei had an indescribable disappointment in her heart, but she also secretly smiled bitterly. "Forget it. It's your own unrequited love." However, Yan Xiaopei's small eyes were still seen by the man. Following Yan Xiaopei's gaze, Yang Yi's tall figure made him faintly vigilant. "This is..." The man couldn't help but ask. Yan Xiaopei held the roses in one hand and held his arm with the other hand. She smiled and said, "This is a friend of mine. He happened to be here to buy flowers today." Yang Yi noticed the hostility in the man's eyes and raised his head in surprise. "Yang Yi, let me introduce you." Yan Xiaopei realized that the man's mood was a bit strange. It seemed that she had gone a bit overboard. She took the initiative to explain and introduce and then took the initiative to explain and introduce. "This is Yang Yi. He is also a friend of mine who owns a shop near the school. His daughter and my son are good friends. This is my boyfriend Yu Qingqing. He runs a training organization." After hearing that Yang Yi had a daughter, Yu Qingqing's expression eased a lot. Instead, he warmly shook hands with Yang Yi and said, "A small training organization relies on the mountain and the water on the river. We rely on Jiangchuan, so we can only train the candidates in this aspect." "Oh, that's good." Yang Yi was quite helpless. He didn't want to know the other person. But to give Yan Xiaopei face, he still reached out his hand and shook hands. "Mr. Yang also owns a shop at the East Gate." Yu Qingqing's hostility had subsided, but his enthusiasm didn't. Perhaps it was because he had been in the training industry for a long time. His mood was very high. He took the initiative to ask. "He owns a coffee shop at the back gate, which is at the north gate." Yan Xiaopei helped Yang Yi to say, "North gate. That's a bit far." Otherwise, I can find a few friends to go there often. However, Yu Qingqing still enthusiastically said, "But that's okay. I'll go back and talk to my employees and let them help you promote." "Okay, thank you." Yang Yi helplessly nodded to the other person gratefully. Besides pretending to be grateful, what else could he do? Yan Xiaopei smiled at Yang Yi and pulled Yu Qingqing and said, "Okay, let my employees take care of Yang Yi. Didn't you want to eat with me? Can you send me home first?" "Course, no problem," Yu Qingqing said politely. Before leaving, Yu Qingqing nodded to Yang Yi and made a gesture to talk later. Yang Yi didn't want to see this person again. This person looked elegant, but he was actually such a talkative person. It was okay that he could talk, but Yang Yi felt that Yu Qingqing was a bit fake. He was obviously full of hostility just now, but after turning his head, he seemed to have forgotten everything. Course, this couldn't be criticized. A mature man should be a bit shrewd. This was a reflection of his charm. It was very compatible with Yan Xiaopei. Yan Xiaopei needed a mature and generous man to accept her past. A young and jealous boy couldn't control her. But Yang Yi didn't like Yu Qingqing. Compared to him, the talkative but sincere little fatty was much cuter. But it didn't matter. He was just a passerby. After Yang Yi bought the flowers, he happily went home. P.S. Regarding this chapter, Xiao Han didn't write a face-slapping plot, nor was it a trap. After all, Yu Qingqing didn't show off too much, and Yang Yi didn't have a conflict with him. They were all adults, so how could there be so many quarrels? He wrote a little more about Yan Xiaopei mainly to fulfill the wish of a book friend. He hoped that Yan Xiaopei could have a good ending. Xiao Han felt that this was a more open ending for Yan Xiaopei. Of course, Yu Qingqing wasn't Yan Xiaopei's future, but writing the character of Yu Qingqing meant that Yan Xiaopei had moved on. As a mature woman, she wasn't infatuated with a man to the point that she couldn't let go. The reality was the same. Yang Yi just had a good figure and was a bit more considerate, but 2 days of contact wasn't enough to make others fall head over heels in love with him. We don't know what Yan Xiaopei's future will be, but she is still working hard to pursue her love. So there is reason to believe that she will meet the right person, right? Chapter 129. Yang Yi carried a large bouquet of flowers as he walked around the campus, which attracted the attention of many students who stayed back during the holidays. However, they did not think that he was going to confess. Yang Yi was wearing a white t-shirt, shorts and flip-flops. No matter how they looked at it, he did not look like he was going to confess. Moreover, Xiao Luo was very considerate as he separated the different types of flowers for Yang Yi and wrapped them into bundles with newspapers. Therefore, Yang Yi looked more like a delivery boy. Yang Yi did not know this, of course. He rushed back with big strides. In the end, just as he went upstairs, Yang Yi was stunned to see a few big and small vases in the living room. They had been washed, and the wet water stains extended from the bottom of the vases to the bathroom. A few black lines seemed to hang down Yang Yi's forehead. "Hey, you're back. What flowers did you buy?" Murphy rolled up her trousers, revealing her fair calves and playful feet. She walked out of the bathroom in slippers and was holding a freshly washed vase. When she saw Yang Yi, she smiled brightly. It was as if an iceberg had melted. That bright smile made Yang Yi forget what he wanted to say. "Mom, do you have any more?" She poked her head out of the bathroom. She was holding a black brush in her hand. It seemed that she had helped her mother a lot. "No more. But don't come out first. Mom wants to wash your hands with soap," Murphy shouted. She put down the vase and quickly turned to go back to the bathroom. Yang Yi gently placed the bouquet of flowers on the dining table. Then, he turned to look at the vases and the water stains on the floor. He shook his head helplessly. "Forget it. I'll just pretend that I didn't see anything. When everything is done, I'll clean it up slowly." Ever since there was a noisy little girl at home, Yang Yi's OCD had improved quite a bit. Of course, this improvement could be put in another way. He could choose to ignore it for a period of time. After a while, Murphy came out with a giggling she. "You've just recovered from your fever, Yet you're still soaking in so much water. Yang-yi reproached as he continued. You're going to have a relapse later. It's okay. I basically don't soak in the water. I use the shower head to wash. Moreover, the sun is scorching the water today. It won't affect it at all. Murphy laughed. She was indeed in a good mood. Perhaps it was because of the joy she felt when she was washing bottles with her daughter in the washroom. Now she spoke with a smile. Murphy's smile was actually very beautiful, like 100 flowers blooming. It was even more beautiful than when she was ice cold. She was already an adult, so she should know how to take care of herself. Yang-yi didn't nag. On the contrary, she couldn't wait to interrupt. She took her father's hand and said, Papa, let me tell you, the water is really hot. Mom said that if she bathes in this water, she will be cooked. And just now, Mom asked she to wash her hands, but she didn't dare to. Yang-yi felt funny and touched the little girl's head. He listened to her story for a while before she stopped. Where did you get these vases? Yang-yi finally had a chance to ask the question in his heart. Don't you know? In that painting studio. Murphy raised her head proudly. Her casually tied ponytail was very youthful and pretty. There is a big box in it, which contains these beautiful vases. But they are not antiques. They used to grow flowers, but I don't know why they were put away later. Yang-yi understood. He had cleaned up the painting studio, but because it was rarely used, it was basically idle. He didn't want to open the things inside. After all, they were things left by old master who. But Murphy took them out now, so he let it go. Anyway, old master who also said that Yang-yi could use the things in the house freely. He could even change the furniture that he didn't want. It was best to keep them as much as possible. But old master who still understood that young people had their own aesthetic standards, so he only asked Yang-yi to take good care of this small building and keep his memory. These vases might have been used by old master whose wife in the past. Why did they put them away? Naturally, there was an answer to this question. But Yang-yi didn't intend to tell Murphy. He smiled and said, It doesn't matter. Since you found them, take them out and use them. But be careful not to break them. The main thing is that these are porcelain. They are easy to break. It's not good if the fragments cut she. Murphy nodded and said, In fact, I want to buy glass vases made of tempered glass. They are transparent and not easy to break. But these vases are beautiful. Look at the flowers and birds on them. They are so well painted. The colors are still so bright after being washed clean. Did you hear what Papa said? Murphy also educated she. These vases can't be touched casually. If you break them, Papa will be very angry. However, the little girl's big eyes were full of wisdom. She said unwillingly, Papa won't be angry. Papa won't be fierce to she. Only Mom will be fierce to you. Yang-yi couldn't help but laugh. Murphy was ashamed and angry. She pulled she over and pretended to slap the little girl's butt twice. Of course, she didn't use much strength. When did Mom become fierce to you? Yes, Papa never slaps she's butt. She pouted. She would rather die than surrender to the evil forces. Murphy wanted to arrange flowers. Yang-yi, who had nothing else to do, certainly wanted to help. According to Murphy's instructions, he unwrapped the flowers wrapped in the newspaper and took them to the bathroom to wash the mud off the roots. This was not enough. In order to keep the blooming flowers fresh, Murphy also had to cut off the leaves at the roots of the flowers. She even had to burn the roots of some flowers. In this way, the nutrients stored in them can be preserved to the greatest extent, and it can prevent them from rotting. Murphy explained to Yang-yi. Of course, Murphy also had to cut the branches into different lengths according to the layers of the flower arrangement. Not all flowers were treated the same way. For example, daffodils had to be placed in light salt water, while lilies had to be placed in sugar water. Yang-yi didn't understand this at all. He could only sit with she and watch Murphy's performance with admiration. There were more details to the flower arrangement. Putting the big flowers at the bottom first and the small flowers at the top was just a small trick. The number of flowers of the same type in each layer must be an odd number. The number can be different, but the flowers of the same type with an odd number will form a more unique image. Murphy explained. The color combination is also very important. Depends on where the vase is placed. For more festive places or your coffee shop, flowers with thick and warm colors will be used. The colors will be red, orange, and yellow. For example, we can use clean and comfortable neutral colors in the living room and bedroom at home. Murphy smiled and said, "Of course, not all colors are the same. Different types of color combination will have different feelings, especially when the contrast is sharp." She had just completed a small vase flower arrangement of lilies and daisies. Although it was not complicated, after the combination, the pure white of the lilies and the bright color of the daisies were combined organically. It was neither monotonous nor too lively. It looked like a work of art. Chapter 130. The flower arrangement itself was a kind of art. Especially when Young-yi saw that Mo-fei had used a long and slender spring rhododendron, also known as Ingshan rhododendron, on a white, slender porcelain vase. It showed the tenacity of the bamboo that would never let go of the green mountain. It also showed the pride of the plum blossom that would never let go of the green mountain. He really had the urge to pay his respects to Murphy. The sparse shadow is horizontal and slanting, the water is clear and shallow, the hidden fragrance floats in the dusk of the moon. Young-yi couldn't help but recite a poem. Murphy had never heard of this poem before, but it really matched the situation. Murphy couldn't help but ask in surprise, "You know how to write poems?" "It wasn't written by me. This poem was written by a poet named Lin Mo." After Young-yi finished speaking, he finished reciting the poem. The other lines weren't as artistic as this one. Murphy also liked the line that matched the situation. She recited it twice and asked Young-yi to find a pen and paper to write it down. In the middle, she asked curiously, "Lin Mo, why haven't I heard of this person before?" Young-yi had learned calligraphy before. Although he didn't delve into it as deeply as he did music, Murphy felt that his handwriting was very methodical. Every stroke was bold and powerful. It was very beautiful. "It's an unknown poet in Jeongnan. I used to see this poem in his former residence, but I forgot where." Young-yi made up a lie and told Murphy. This Lin Mo was a poet from the northern Song dynasty in his previous life. Naturally, he didn't exist in this world. However, Young-yi didn't think of taking his poem as his own. After all, he really didn't know how to write poems. He only knew how to recite them, so it would be easy to expose him. Murphy didn't care. She happily stuck the 2 lines of the poem that Young-yi wrote on the craft paper onto the white porcelain vase. This time, the artistic conception was even more profound. After dealing with the flowers, Young-yi and Murphy were busy the entire afternoon. She had long lost her patience. She ran to the side to watch TV. "What's left is for us to arrange these flowers. Let me see where to place them." Murphy got up and comfortably stretched her body as she spoke. This stretch stretched her cotton short-sleeved home t-shirt, revealing a smooth lower abdomen. Coincidentally, Young-yi's line of sight followed and caught a glimpse of the spring scenery. Murphy didn't notice. After she put down her arm, she slowly walked to the front of the TV and gestured. "You can put our carnations and calla lilies in the TV cabinet. But you have to stay a little further away, or else you'll be affected by the TV's radiation." The corners of Young-yi's eyes twitched. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. "Hey Mom, move away. All of you block him." Cece suddenly yelled out, unwilling to comply. The little girl was watching TV attentively. She couldn't take her eyes off the screen, but someone ran over and blocked her view of the TV. At first, she wasn't angry. She just silently waved her little hand, as if she could push her mom away. However, Murphy didn't move. Instead, when she changed her position, she coincidentally turned around and continued to block in front of Shishi. How could the little girl not complain? She jumped off the sofa and tried to push her mother's butt. "All right, Mom is wrong. Mom, move away." Murphy smiled as she comforted her daughter. However, she didn't have time to care about them. She was watching the cartoon. The plot just happened to be tense. The little girl looked back with every step and dawdled for a long time before returning to the sofa. Murphy directed Young-E to arrange the flowers next to the TV cabinet and said, "Then you can put lilies and daisies on the table because the vase is smaller." At this time, Young-E looked at the TV and the flowers. Finally, he couldn't help but say, "Murphy, I think shouldn't we put another pot? That vase is the same as this one. Wouldn't it look better if we put a pot on the left and right?" Murphy walked over and studied it. However, she shook her head and rejected Young-E's suggestion. "No, it doesn't look good." "Why?" Young-E didn't understand. "Because it's close to the balcony. The wind is very strong at night, and the flowers are rotten," Murphy explained. "Then we can close the window." Young-E still wanted to fight for it. "Doesn't look good closing the window. It's next to the curtains. What about taking down the curtains?" Young-E made a very unreliable suggestion. Murphy finally realized that something was wrong. She turned her head and stared at Young-E with her beautiful eyes as if they could talk. Young-E felt a little uncomfortable. She looked around again. She looked at the symmetrical sofa and then looked at the dining table that was always arranged with 4 chairs even though there were only 3 people eating in the house. Finally, when Young-E was fidgeting, Murphy said, "Hey, Young-E, are you a Virgo?" Young-E was immediately unwilling. He said, "How can that be? How can I be a Virgo?" The date on his ID card wasn't a Virgo. Young-E didn't know what constellation he was. He was an orphan in his previous life and didn't know the date of his birth. Of course, he didn't believe in constellations. However, when he thought about how many people on the internet were defaming Virgo, Young-E felt that it couldn't be any better. So he firmly denied it. "That's true. You were born in December." Murphy saw some information about Young-E. "But why are you the same as a Virgo? Do you have mysophobia?" Murphy asked. "I don't have mysophobia," Young-E complained. Finally, under Murphy's gaze, he sighed and said, "Okay, I just have a slight obsessive-compulsive disorder. It's not mysophobia." "Oh right, obsessive-compulsive disorder. I got it mixed up. But is it really slight?" Murphy felt that teasing Young-E was very interesting. She put her hands behind her back and deliberately pretended to be strong. The corner of her mouth couldn't help but reveal a smile. Young-E finally gave in. "Okay, I'll do it. You have the final say. I really don't care." "Okay, I won't tease you anymore." Murphy stepped forward and patted Young-E's shoulder. She smiled and said, "Go and move the flowers." "What?" "Move the pot of flowers that you said and put it on the other side of the TV. Do you want me to move it?" Murphy blinked at Young-E with an innocent look. "But isn't that ugly?" Young-E was very happy, but he still asked. "Now I've changed my mind." Murphy didn't want to admit that she wanted to take care of Young-E's feelings. She snorted, turned around and walked away. She left a sentence. "It seems that it's quite nice to put it symmetrically like this." Young-E was overjoyed. He quickly moved the flowers in the same vase. In the process, he inevitably blocked Shishi's line of sight. What's wrong with you adults?" Shishi unhappily pouted. Young-E moved the vase and put it in the position that he had already thought of. He looked back. All of a sudden, his heart felt comfortable. Young-E was in a good mood. He walked over, held Shishi's little face, and kissed his daughter's forehead. However, Shishi was not happy. Her father's hand covered her eyes. "I can't see," the little girl complained. Chapter 131. Although Murphy went on a vacation, as Murphy's agent, Mo Shawan didn't have a vacation. She still had to go back to the company to deal with Murphy's work and arrange her future itinerary. However, these days there were more and more people gossiping. Some people, after half a month, don't even make a move, and still say that they have collected enough songs to make an album. On the corridor to the pantry, Emo Shawan could hear someone deliberately raising their voice. Isn't that right? Now that she probably can't get any songs, and she's afraid of the hardships and fatigue, I heard that she asked for leave to go home and sleep. Then wouldn't she never be able to raise her head again? Is she willing to stay on the second and third lines like this? Who knows? Anyway, she's old and she's still giving birth. Cough that, She still wants to be a star, dream on. I understand, didn't Sister Ling give a gag order? Hee hee. If it was some time ago, Emo Shawan might have quarreled with the other party, but now Emo Shawan learned to ignore it. However, Emo Xiaojuan's temper was still there. She nodded with a smile on the outside, but in her heart she was fiercely thinking, damn it, a bunch of little bitches. When my sister counterattacks, see if I don't tear your mouths apart. Emo Shaowan still had some friends in the company, such as Xiao Ai and some girls who had no desires and didn't like to fight. She had a good relationship with them. In the pantry, Emo Shaowan met a good female colleague who was eating fruit. Hey Shaowan, do you want to raise a cat? The female colleague saw Emo Shaowan and asked excitedly. Emo Shaowan shook her head and smiled. No, look at how busy I am. I don't even have time to find a boyfriend. How would I have time to raise a little master? Do you think I'm Xiao Ai? I'm talking about Xiao Ai. The female colleague said to Emo Shaowan. Don't you know? Xiao Ai is going to give the cat away. Give the cat away. How could this be? Xiao Ai loves cats as much as her life. Emo Shaowan asked in surprise. The female colleague nodded, then shook her head and said, not all of them, but the kittens have to be given to others to raise. The situation is like this. Emo Shaowan finally understood what had happened from the other party's gossip. It turned out that Xiao Ai's parents had introduced Xiao Ai to a man who was said to be very good. In the end, Xiao Ai suddenly remembered that the door from the bedroom to the balcony was not closed properly. Big Cat, on the other hand, was fine. It could leap over roofs and vault over walls as it pleased. But she was afraid that the curious kitten would climb to the balcony and fall down. Although it was only the third floor, such a big kitten would become a meat patty if it fell down. Did he really think that cats had 9 lives? Therefore, she refused to have a deep conversation with her blind date and hurried home to check on her kitten. Doesn't she know to come back together, ask the other party to wait downstairs, and then close the door before continuing the date? Mo Shaowan asked incredulously. Who knows? Anyway, that man is not very good. He even complained to Xiao Ai's parents. The female colleague curled her lips and said, let's not talk about Xiao Ai and that man. Anyway, this blind date was over. Xiao Ai's parents were furious and ordered Xiao Ai to quickly give away all the kittens. It was good enough for a girl to raise 1 cat, but raising a litter? Were they going to raise them as children? Did she want a boyfriend? Was she going to die alone? This was the logic of the older generation. Xiao Ai had no choice but to contact people everywhere, trying to find someone to entrust her litter of kittens to. She was not willing to give it to ordinary people because she was afraid that the kittens would meet someone unworthy. Now she's in a terrible fix. The female colleague sighed and said. She also felt that Xiao Ai was pitiful, so she helped her ask around. Mo Xiaojuan's eyes lit up. Murphy had been at Yang Yi's house for a few days. Except for the first day, which was stiff because of the fever, she spent the rest of the time very happily. Arranging flowers, asking Yang Yi to draw a cartoon version of her portrait, denouncing her father with she, and so on. These were all trivial things in life, but the days were very comfortable. The smile on her face gradually increased, and even the evening walks were as pleasant as traveling. Today, Murphy remembered that Yang Yi's coffee shop had not been open for the past few days. Moreover, she also wanted to check if Yang Yi had fulfilled his promise to leave her a shelf to put her records and accessories. Therefore, under the pretext of urging Yang Yi to operate normally, The family went downstairs to the corner coffee shop. She usually didn't notice it, but today, when Young-yi came out of the shop with a signboard and hung it up, Mo Fei finally noticed the name of the shop. "Ah, Young-yi, why is your coffee shop also called the coffee shop on the corner? It's very similar to the song Long Time No See by Chen Yijie." "Oh really? I also like this song, so I changed it later," Young-yi said calmly. "Really?" Murphy was skeptical. She muttered, "Why do I seem to remember that this sign is similar to the one before?" However, she didn't want to delve into it. Moreover, Shishi's call diverted her attention. "Wow, Mum." Shishi walked in first. When she saw the grand piano in the shop, her eyes lit up. She ran back, took her mother's hand, and said as if she was presenting a treasure, "Mom, I'll show you something." "What is it?" Murphy was taken to the piano by her daughter. "It's this. Papa said this is a piano." Shishi was worried that her mother would misunderstand like her, so she took the initiative to explain. "But it doesn't eat steel." "Young-yi, you bought a piano." Murphy was surprised at first, and then she was puzzled by her daughter. "What do you mean it doesn't eat steel?" "Yes, I suddenly felt that it would be good to put a piano in a coffee shop, so I bought it." Young-yi couldn't help but want to laugh. He told Murphy about the day when Shishi compared the electronic piano with the piano. "Haha, Shishi, you silly girl." Murphy was amused by her daughter. "I'm not stupid. I can play the piano." The little girl sat down on the small stool in front of the piano with her chest out, and asked her father to open the cover for her. The little girl stretched out a finger, poked the white key, and then poked the black key. Well, in her opinion, if she could make a sound, then she could play the piano. "Get up, Mom will play for you, see what it means to play the piano." Mo Fei's memory of learning piano when she was a child was stimulated by her daughter's lovely performance, so she said excitedly, "Okay, Shishi wants to see Mom play the piano." Shishi jumped down happily. Young-yi also watched with interest, watching Murphy elegantly sitting in front of the piano. He heard Murphy sing a lot of songs, and even watched some videos of Murphy's early performances, but he has never seen Murphy play the piano. Ding ding dong dong. Murphy played a string of notes from left to right on the piano, and then she began to play. It was one of her old songs. Young-yi recognized it when he heard the prelude and said, "Tender memories?" Murphy turned to look at Young-yi, smiled, and nodded. Chapter 132. So I can't let go of this memory. Smiling in the wind with your gentleness, so familiar. Just like snuggling together under the moonlight. Murphy played steadily and hummed softly. The low but pure piano sound, accompanied by her clear and affectionate singing, echoed in the coffee shop. Shishi was still okay, she just felt that Mom was very good, but Young-yi was completely intoxicated. He couldn't help but close his eyes, leaving only his ears to feel the rhythm of the music in this space. "Ah, where's the applause? Shishi, where's your applause?" After Murphy finished playing, her voice made Young-yi come back to his senses. "Mom is the best." Shishi giggled and threw herself into her mother's arms. Young-yi was also at the side, smiling, gently clapping his hands to offer his late applause. "By the way, Young-yi, you didn't make it clear just now. Why did you buy such a grand piano and put it in the shop?" At this moment, Murphy gently stroked the logo on the piano and said in surprise, "It's Theodore's grand piano. On TV, when you see other people's coffee shops, there will usually be a piano, it will look very good. So I thought about it and added one in the shop. It just so happened that last month's royalties were paid, so I have some money left." Young-yi explained simply. Murphy didn't delve into it. She was also used to spending money extravagantly. She didn't think that Young-yi bought a piano and put it in the shop was wasteful. She just asked in amusement, "Do you know how to play the piano? You didn't buy it back just to wait for me to play it for you, right? Perhaps it would have a different pink effect." However, how could Young-yi be this kind of person who would say such sweet words? He calmly shook his head and said, "Of course not, I also want to learn how to play the piano. I used to know a little bit and I like it." "You can play the piano. Come on and show us," Murphy said excitedly. It's time to show a little bit of new skills, although Yang-yi didn't intend to show off too much at once. "What are you playing?" Yang-yi sat on the piano and asked with a smile. "I want to play too." She was overjoyed. She ran to her father's side and snuggled up to him. Anyway, the bench was quite long, so Yang-yi didn't care. "What else do you want to play?" Murphy was a bit speechless. "Don't tell me your piano skills are not bad now." Yang-yi didn't say anything. He just followed Mo Fei's example and played a melody from left to right on the piano, crossing his left and right hands. Although it seemed that he was not as skilled as Mo Fei, and he even missed one or two notes, Mo Fei was still surprised to see a trace of clue. Yang-yi really learned how to play the piano. Other things aside, at the very least, the sitting posture, the angle of the hand and elbow, the height of the wrist and the strength of the fingers playing the piano were all just right. Without formal learning and a period of hard practice, it would be very difficult to do it. However, Murphy now has a fairly good ability to accept Yang-yi's skills from time to time. She didn't question but helped Yang-yi think of a song to play. She suddenly had an idea. She turned around, went to her exclusive shelf, and took a small booklet. That was also the sheet music that was given to her in her previous platinum album, Same Love as Missouri Road. Mo Fei excitedly turned to the first page, pointed to her song and said, "You play this song, Same Love as Strangers." This is a bit difficult." Yang-yi scratched his head. She asked him to play the whole song right from the start. Yang-yi felt a little nervous, worried that Murphy would notice something. "It's okay, take your time. If you don't play well, I'll teach you," Murphy comforted. Of course, Yang-yi didn't know that the reason why Murphy was so proactive was because she was very happy to see Yang-yi's new situation in music. In the past, she hoped that Yang-yi could have a common language with her. But in the past, Yang-yi only made her angry. How could he be in the mood to talk about music? No, in the past, Yang-yi didn't like decadent music. Now that it was rare for Yang-yi to show off, Mo Fei seemed to see hope. She decided that even if Yang-yi played badly, she would praise him well and never dampen his enthusiasm. On this side, she was still snuggling up to her father. She didn't want to leave, because it was more interesting to watch from such a close distance. Even when she saw her father raise his hand and put it on the piano, the little girl was interested and stretched out her long and thin arms to press on the piano twice. "Do you want to play a duet with your father?" Yang-yi smiled and gently touched Shishi's little head. Shishi naturally didn't understand the meaning of a duet, but she cleverly nodded her head vigorously. "In the future, Mom will teach you how to play. Come down, now it's your papa's time to perform," Murphy advised. Shishi naughtily shook her little head, squeezed into her father's arms and crisply said, "No. It's okay, our Shishi is very obedient. After Dad starts to play, she won't disturb Dad. Promise Dad that you'll be obedient and don't reach out, okay?" Yang-yi stretched out his big fist. It was easier to accept her father's words. The little girl obediently nodded her head. She knew her father's habit of making promises. She giggled, stretched out her little pink fist, and touched her father's big fist. Yang-yi liked the song Strangers very much, but it was indeed his first time playing it, so it was inevitable that he was unfamiliar with it. However, Yang-yi also added a gap where he had to read a line of music before he could play it. This made the rhythm even slower, and the melody couldn't be coherent. Murphy didn't care at all. She felt that Yang-yi could play a small part after reading the music score, which was enough to surprise her. Therefore, she sincerely praised. "You played very well. You just need to be a little familiar with the key positions. Try to be able to play without lowering your head. It would be best if you could look at the music score while playing." Of course, Murphy also gave a lot of guidance. She would tell Yang-yi which notes should be tapped and played quickly. She would also tell Yang-yi which notes should be played in series. Although Yang-yi didn't necessarily know less than Murphy, looking at the good teacher Murphy, he still obediently accepted her guidance. "You have to practice harder. There's a piano at home, so you must play better. At least practice the music scores of my songs. Murphy didn't seem to care. She patted Yang Yi's shoulder and said, "When I have a concert in the future, I'll ask you to accompany me." Yang Yi smiled helplessly. This kind of feeling of a lonely master being encouraged by a non-professional amateur was really a bit strange. However, what he didn't know was that Mo Fei was serious about it. She really hoped that one day, she could invite Yang Yi to perform on her stage and perform with her. In this way, he might be able to understand my work and my dream, right? Chapter 133. So, one last question. What kind of person is Mr. Mu Xiang? In Shanghai, a famous talk show Jixin interview, created by the famous host Luo Xian, was in the middle of recording a new episode. The popular artist that Luo Xian had invited this time was Chen Yijie, a popular artist from Harbor City who is currently very popular in China. We all know that Mu Xiang is a very mysterious songwriter. Not only did he hide his personal information on the Copyright Protection Association's website, but he also kept the other songs that he created confidential, Luo Xian explained to the camera. She was close to 50 years old, but she took good care of herself. She was still radiant, graceful, and intellectual on the stage, which made her gain many male fans of different ages. Such a talented songwriter can still keep his inner peace and doesn't want to be disturbed by the outside world. It's really rare in our entertainment circle. So we're very curious. What kind of person is he? Luo Xian smiled. Chen Yijie scratched his stylish hair. He was a person who didn't care much about his personal image, so his hair became a little messy as he scratched it. He wondered if the stylist backstage would want to beat him to death. How should I put it? I received Mr. Mu Xiang's request, and he said that I can't disclose his personal information to the public, Chen Yijie said awkwardly. It's okay. We can talk about some insignificant information within an acceptable range. It's also to satisfy the wishes of so many fans of long time no see, right? Luo Xian smiled. The invited audience were all students from the nearby Film and Television Academy. They could satisfy their wishes of watching the show closely, and of course, they had to fulfill their responsibilities. So they didn't hesitate to shout, "Yes." Okay. Chen Yijie cupped his hands and smiled. Since I'm on Luo Xian's show, I have to give something. How about this, you ask me and I'll tell you what I can. If I can't, I'll sing a song to apologize, okay? Actually, these were all communicated before the recording of the show, and Chen Yijie was just following the script. Mu Xiang is a teacher, so there is no doubt that he is a man. But please allow me to make a small guess. Judging from his lyrics, the emotions he expresses are quite deep and full of the sorrowful charm of a mature man. Of course, Eason's acting was outstanding too. Luo Xian smiled. I guess Mr. Mu Xiang is a middle-aged man. Am I right? Chen Yijie shook his head with a smile and said, No, Mr. Mu Xiang is a young man. She's much younger than me. Oh, young man. Then his fans are also very lucky. Luo Xian pretended to be exaggerating, which caused the female fans below the stage to cheer, as if they were very happy to hear that Mu Xiang was a young man. He's relatively young, but he's also a very mature person. You can tell from his lyrics, Chen Yijie added. Is Mu Xiang handsome? In front of the camera, Luo Xian acted like a little fangirl and asked with sparkling eyes. Handsome. Compared with me, he's more handsome. Chen Yijie answered without hesitation, and then he smiled. Oh, Eason, don't belittle yourself. You're the most handsome man in my heart. Luo Xian also smiled. The effect of this show was perfect. To be honest, Chen Yijie really had nothing to do with being handsome. Compared with the 4 heavenly kings in Harbor City, he got to the throne step by step with his singing. When he said that others were more handsome than him, everyone laughed tacitly. By the way, I still don't understand. Since he's a handsome and talented young man, why did he choose to hide his identity instead of choosing to debut at such a good time? We all know that in fact, There are too many young people who want to enter the entertainment circle, but they are not as popular as Mu Ziyang now. Naturally, they won't be favored by the entertainment companies, Luo Exine said. At this moment, the audience below the stage was silent and looked at Chen Yijie closely. They were also the young people who wanted to enter the entertainment circle but had no way to do so, as Luo Exine said. Is it because he was hurt by a love affair? Luo Exine asked. The song Long Time No See seems to tell a very sad story of a broken love. As for the love affair, it's more personal. I didn't ask Mr. Mu Ziyang. But as for why he didn't choose this path, I think it's because everyone has his own ambition. Chen Yijie thought for a while and said, when we met in his shop, Mr. Mu Ziyang gave me the feeling that he was a hermit. Sorry, I need to say it in Cantonese. He's a great hermit who hides in the city. Maybe his past is not simple. Maybe he used to be magnificent in other places. But now Mr. Mu Ziyang enjoys his own peace and the happiness accompanied by music. Luo Exine was indeed a famous host. She immediately found the secret in Chen Yijie's words. She suddenly asked, his shop? What shop did Mr. Mu Ziyang open in Jiang City? He opened a shop in Jiang City. Chen Yijie was just expressing his feelings, and now he almost blurted out the answer to Luo Exine's question. Fortunately, he came to his senses quickly and immediately covered his mouth. Luo Exine, you cheated. You can't continue to reveal this. Luo Exine made an annoyed expression. She spread out her hands and said to the camera, Mu Ziyang's fans, I can only help you this much. Mu Ziyang has a shop in Jiang City. If you look carefully, you might find it. Well, since you can't say it, Eason, you have to sing as punishment. Luo Exine laughed. That's not a problem. What do you want to hear? Chen Yijie was also free and easy. He stood up from the sofa with the microphone. Needless to say, the audience below the stage were all shouting Long Time No See. After all, Chen Yijie's new album only had one Mandarin song that everyone could understand. The scene changed, and the sofa for the interview was removed, revealing a wide stage. Under the brilliant arrangement of the lighting engineer, it also presented the appearance of a small karaoke hall. The surrounding accompaniment sounded, and Luo Exine swayed along with the audience below the stage who stood up. I've come to your city. Chen Yijie stood in the middle of the stage and sang with deep emotion. At this time it was already past 11 o'clock at night. She had already fallen asleep. Yang Yi turned off the computer and walked out of the study after moving some manuscripts as usual. The living room was still brightly lit. Yang Yi walked over and saw a beautiful figure standing alone on the big balcony. Chapter 134. Murphy stood on the balcony. Her eyes were somewhat blurred as she looked at the Grand Canal with only a few lights on the shore. The night wind blew her loose hair, but she didn't care, she just silently thought about her worries. Suddenly, a weight came from her shoulder. A coat was draped on her shoulders that were a little cold from the river wind. Murphy looked back and saw Yang Yi's angular face. Although he was facing the light, he was still so familiar and handsome. Why aren't you resting? Yang Yi walked to Murphy's side. He also leaned on the railing and leisurely leaned on it. Can't sleep. Maybe I had a lot of fun playing the piano today? Murphy smiled and said, when two people are together, it is easy to have an awkward situation. Yang Yi himself is not a person who is good at chatting with others, but he is better at listening. And Murphy is also an unsociable person. The two of them are like a closed jar, talking. Suddenly the atmosphere was very awkward. After a while, Murphy seemed to have made up her mind. She said to Yang Yi, you know about my new album, right? Yang Yi hesitated. He didn't know how to answer. New album? Which new album? Is it the comeback album that was released before? Or is it the new album that is now preparing? If it is the latter, Yang Yi felt that if he wasn't Mu Ziyang, it would be difficult to get the news that Murphy is preparing a new album. The situation is very bad. Yang Yi hesitated for a moment, and chose the former. Murphy nodded, her expression was calm, but there was bitterness hidden in the depths of her voice. "It is the worst album since my debut." Young-yi was silent for a while, then said, "I can see that you have been under a lot of pressure these 2 months." However, Murphy didn't want to complain to him. She has long been used to bearing the burden alone, and then moving forward with the burden. Mo-fei calmly said to Young-yi, "Now there's a chance. My fan wrote a song for me, and it's very well written. If I don't say his name, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for you to guess who he is." Young-yi's expression didn't change, but he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "It's me. Do I even need to guess?" However, Murphy looked at the expressionless Young-yi and felt uneasy. She had been worried about this problem before. "Are you angry?" "Ah." Murphy's question came out of nowhere, and Young-yi was confused. Murphy pursed her lips and whispered, "You're angry." "What?" Young-yi's head was now full of question marks, as if it was being pulled by a string, a series of questions popping out. Murphy felt a little wronged, but she didn't show it. She just said in a low voice, "Don't mind it so much. Although he's a male fan. He said that he only wanted to write a song for me because he likes my voice. Moreover, he is also the composer of the song Long Time No See, that you like, sung by Chen Yijia. His name is Muzong." Muziong. Young-yi pretended to be surprised, and then smiled. "He wrote a song for you, why would I care? This is a good thing." Young-yi was still worried that Murphy would think too much, so he helped to persuade Murphy. "The song written by Muziong is very good. You should be happy that such a great person wrote a song for you. Your next album will definitely sell at the platinum level like Chen Yijia's." Murphy was a little confused by her own thoughts and Young-yi's reaction. "That's not right. Shouldn't Young-yi care a lot?" Murphy remembered that not long after she told Young-yi that she was going to make a comeback, she participated in a program and sang a song with another male singer. As a result, she sent Shishi over to play with her father on the weekend. Young-yi's face was dark, and he was even fiercer than his usual stern face. "The lyrics of the song he wrote for me may be a bit ambiguous." Murphy hesitated for a moment, but still said it very frankly. Since Murphy said so, Young-yi had to follow her words and asked, "How is it ambiguous?" "I'll sing it for you, but please don't mind it. He said that these songs were not written for me, but for the woman he loves. It's just that they are suitable for me to sing, so he hopes that I can sing them well." Mo-fei's heart was beating like a drum, so she gave Young-yi a heads up first. Young-yi nodded gently. He was quite looking forward to it. He wanted to know how good Murphy would sound when she sang the song he wrote for her. There is no precaution at all, and there is no trace of concern. In the gentle night wind, Murphy's ethereal voice rose gently, like a nightingale written by Chekhov. When the singer gently opened her beak and chirped, the entire forest was filled with her crisp and sweet voice. Even the accompaniment band was so excited that they forgot to play. They all held their breaths and listened to her in silence. The nightingale's voice was full of strength and tenderness. Young-yi listened with bated breath. His eyes fell on Murphy's face, but they seemed to be unfocused. It also seemed that he was so focused that Murphy was a little nervous. Finally, she finished singing a part. Murphy couldn't help but ask Young-yi, "What do you think?" Young-yi came back to his senses and said subconsciously, "It's good, but there are a few lines that weren't handled well." Murphy was also a little confused by Young-yi's answer. For example, the line "From my world, there is no news" you sang a little bit too slowly. I think it might be better if the rhythm is faster. Also the line, "Although you and I are strangers passers-by, we can still feel each other's eyes, a heartbeat." Do you find it very rhythmic? You have to sing this rhythmic feeling. Young-yi compared Murphy's singing with the original song. There were really a lot of differences. Although Murphy's voice had a plainer and sad charm than the original song, but in terms of details, Murphy had not been polished many times. Murphy's interest was aroused by Young-yi. She pulled Young-yi and let Young-yi sing all the things that he mentioned just now so that she could feel how to change the rhythm. In the end, Murphy had to be convinced by Yang Yi's interpretation of the original song. She said with emotion, "You are still very talented in music. It's a pity that there is a problem with your voice. You have never sung before, so you don't know the correct way of speaking and breathing rhythm. From tomorrow onwards, you have to practice with me," Murphy said seriously. "I want to teach you how to sing." Yang Yi knew his own weaknesses. In his previous life, his voice was destroyed when he was young, and his voice was like sandpaper, so he had never thought of learning how to sing. In this life, it was even more impossible for his predecessor to learn how to sing. "That's good, but I still have to teach she swordsmanship in the morning." Yang Yi scratched his head. "You still have to wait for her to wake up. Before she wakes up, we will have already finished practicing," Murphy said. "I want to go running with you and then practice my voice." Finally, they found something that the two of them could do together. "Wait," Murphy just realized that she had gone off topic. "No, I was asking you, what do you think of this song?" "It's very good. Mu Xiang wrote a good song, and you sang it even better," Yang Yi praised. "That's not what I meant." Murphy stamped her feet anxiously and said, "Don't you think that the lyrics are very ambiguous? But don't take it to heart, because Mu Xiang himself said that these songs were written for the woman he loves, so don't misunderstand. If you still don't believe me, I can show you his email. Do you still want to see it? These are all written by me." Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this straightforward girl. He simply pressed his hands on Murphy's shoulders through the jacket and turned her body towards him. Looking at her panicked eyes, he smiled and said, "Listen carefully, Comrade Murphy, I'm telling you, I really don't care. I'm very happy that Mu Xiang wrote songs for you. And I'm even happier that you sang for me. I hope that you can continue to work hard and sing happily on your stage. So don't worry and use it." Yang Yi looked at Murphy gently. Murphy was about 1.7 meters tall, but in front of Yang Yi, she was as petite as a little bird. Being looked at by Yang Yi in such a domineering way, she couldn't help blushing. Suddenly, as if there was an awkward silence, the balcony became quiet again. But the atmosphere became a little charming. Yang Yi forgot to let go of her hand. Mo Fei, who was right in front of him, was as delicate as a purple-white bellflower. Her eyes were like a dodging deer, and her red lips were like petals that were slightly opened, making his mouth dry. His heart was already restless, but he was afraid to disturb the beauty. You. After a long time, the two almost spoke at the same time. "You first," Yang Yi said. "I want to go back to sleep, I'm so sleepy." Murphy's voice was as thin as silk. She lowered her head and didn't dare to look at Yang Yi's burning eyes. "That's what I mean." Although Yang Yi was a little disappointed, he immediately let go of his hand and said softly, "It's late, you should rest. You said you had to wake up early tomorrow." Murphy shyly lowered her head and walked to the living room, but stopped and turned her head. She looked at Yang Yi and bit her lower lip. "Tonight, thank you." Not sure if she was thanking Yang Yi for giving her the jacket, or thanking Yang Yi for his understanding. Chapter 135. However, Murphy didn't practice singing with Yang Yi the next day because she slept too late last night and couldn't get up in the morning. Yang Yi didn't wake her up either. He even complained about it later. Murphy still had something to do today. She had to go back to the company and bring back the song that Mu Xiang wrote for her. Then she would practice singing with Yang Yi at Yang Yi's house. Although it was a bit stupid to practice singing during a vacation, Mo Fei felt that it was better to practice singing with Yang Yi instead of wasting his life doing nothing every day. It could speed up the progress of the new album in the future, and it could also cultivate the relationship between the two of them. It was two birds with one stone. The owner of the coffee shop, Yang Yi, didn't want to open the shop at all. He thought that he had nothing to do anyway, so he drove his tyrannical wolf and sent Murphy back to the company. She was happy because she could go for a ride in the car again. But something was wrong. Because her mother was sitting in the car, her father didn't open the window for her. The little girl felt that something was missing from the ride. Tyrannical Wolf's engine is a military standard, and it is full of power. Yang Yi drives on the ring highway, speeding all the way. In Cece's excited cries, they arrive at Tianmei's building. Shishi, be good and wait for Mom downstairs with Papa. Before Murphy got out of the car, she kissed Shishi on the cheek. Mom, I want to go up too, Shishi said with a pout. No, your Papa's car can't enter the parking lot. There are too many people outside. Mom can't take Shishi up, Murphy explained. Mom will go and come back quickly. However, she wasn't very confident. Although it wasn't very troublesome to bring down a stack of printed paper, Emo Shawan had mysteriously told her over the phone that there would be a surprise. She didn't know if it would delay her time. Okay then. Shishi nodded obediently. Then I want Papa to tell me a story. Okay, but you are not allowed to talk about Journey to the West. Murphy laughed. Journey to the West can only be told when Mom is here. Mom also wants to hear it. Murphy wasn't too interested in Yang Yi's other fairy tales. After all, they were still a little childish. However, Journey to the West was different. Murphy fell in love with it after listening to Shishi's story. Not only did she pester Yang Yi to tell her the earlier parts of the story, but she was also more anxious than Shishi to urge him to update the novel. He wouldn't let her do this or that. Shishi pursed her lips in grievance. It's okay. Daddy will tell you another story. Yang Yi quickly turned back to comfort his daughter. He smiled and said, Daddy has many good stories. However, after Murphy went upstairs, Yang Yi told his daughter the story for a while before he was interrupted by a phone call. It was from Mr. Liu. Yang Yi smiled apologetically at his daughter and picked up the phone. Liu Sheng, is there any progress in my fairy tale book? To be honest, Yang Yi was still looking forward to the publication of this fairy tale book. After all, the previous two popular books were basically carried over by him. As for this fairy tale book, 80% of the story was created by himself based on the fairy tales of his previous life. Would it be popular? What kind of sales would it get? Yang Yi didn't know in his heart. However, it was this unpredictability that made Yang Yi look forward to it. However, Mr. Liu did not want to talk to Yang Yi about this today. He said apologetically, I'm sorry, Yang Yi. Your book is still in the typesetting process. It's estimated that it will take half a month. However, please rest assured that our publishing house values your book very much. Shishi was already a little impatient. She shifted her little butt in the back seat, moving here and there for a while. However, she was still quite obedient and did not disturb her father's work. Mr. Liu was long-winded and finally got to the point. I called to disturb you today because a big director came to our publishing house and asked for your contact information. He wants to talk to you about the film and television copyright of Soldier's Assault and Drawing Sword. Yang Yi was still very interested in this news. After all, he knew that these two books had great potential for adaptation. In his previous life, needless to say, Drawing Sword won the ratings of Central TV that year. On the other hand, Soldier's Assault caused a sensation. Not only was the TV series discussed all over the country, but it also received generous returns in terms of ratings and awards. Of course, a good script could also be made into a bad film, such as the current fresh meat version of Drawing Sword. The selection of actors was very important, and so was the director's skills. Yang Yi did not want these two classics to be made into bad films. Who's this big director? Yang Yi asked. Oh, look at me. I forgot to tell you. It's director Chen Fengchen, Mr. Liu said excitedly. Dramas like Capital City, The Age of War and Flying Tiger in Snowfield were all filmed by him. Yang Yi was not as excited as Mr. Liu because he had never heard of this name, nor had he watched these TV dramas. After all, his predecessor almost never watched TV dramas and only watched the news. Give him my address and contact information, and ask him to come to Rivertown to find me, Yang Yi said calmly. He decided to get to know Chen Fengchen first and see how good his directing skills were. According to Mr. Liu's introduction, it seemed that he had directed many war dramas, which might be in line with Yang Yi's choice. However, Mr. Liu was a little shocked by Yang Yi's words. "You're asking Director Chen to come to River Town to find you?" "Yes, is there a problem?" Yang Yi was puzzled. Chapter 136. Yang Yi Shishi, I have a surprise for you. Mo Fei stood outside the car with a corrugated box in her arms. Her bright eyes and the smile that revealed a few neat and white teeth dazzled Yang Yi a little. "What's the surprise?" Shishi blinked her big eyes and asked expectantly. Mo Shaowan came out from the back and pushed Murphy. She shouted, get in the car first. Sister, you're standing in public like this. Aren't you afraid of being photographed?" Murphy sat in the front passenger seat, while Mo Shaowan and Shishi sat in the back. "Look." Murphy just sat down, and before she put on her seatbelt, she impatiently reached into the corrugated box and took out a little kitten that looked like it was stained with ink. Mo Fei held the little kitten's belly with one hand and held its little butt with the other hand. The little kitten turned its head uneasily and opened its mouth to let out a cry. Meow! Her childish voice was so adorable. A kitten! Shishi, who was in the back seat, cried out in surprise. The little girl covered her mouth, and her big eyes were filled with joy and disbelief. A kitten! Yang Yi's reaction was very different. He opened his mouth and asked. It seemed that Yang Yi was not surprised, only shocked. Not just one. Murphy passed the kitten to her left hand and held it in front of her chest. Then, she took out another kitten from the corrugated box with her right hand. Okay, now there are two kittens meowing. Wait. Yang Yi clearly heard another meow. There are 3 in total. Mo Shaowan proudly said. When I told Xiao Ai, she had already told others that she would give some away, so there were only 3 left. But I have a good relationship with Xiao Ai, so I can choose. Yang Yi felt like he was going to collapse. 1 kitten is not too much. She actually gave me 3 at once. Speaking of which, why did he get 3 of them? Wasn't 2 good enough? Don't they know that odd numbers can't be made symmetrical? I like it. Quick, Auntie Shaowan, help me take a look. She shouted anxiously. She was tied to the child seat and was eagerly looking forward to seeing the kitten. Mo Shaowan carried the slightly larger kitten that Murphy had rescued before. She was delighted. The little girl looked at the delicate kitten and was still a little worried. On one hand, she was worried that she would accidentally hurt the kitten, and on the other hand, she was a little afraid that the kitten would bite her. The kitten was almost 2 months old and had all its baby teeth. However, she really liked it. She couldn't help but reach out her little hand and stroke the little cat's head. The cat's fur was soft and very comfortable. After the little kitten was touched, it narrowed its eyes and raised its head. This scared Shishi so much that she quickly retracted her hand. It's okay, it won't bite you. It's very happy that you're touching it. Mo Shaowan laughed. Shishi then beamed with joy and played with the kitten. The kitten even rubbed its soft little ears against her palm. The little girl was very happy. You don't like cats. Murphy's happiness had passed. She keenly noticed that Yang Yi's emotions were not as excited as her daughter's. Yang Yi smiled awkwardly and said, It's not that I don't like cats. It's just that they shed their fur. He really couldn't say whether he liked or disliked cats. For pets like cats, which required emotional investment, Yang Yi had refused to get close to them in his previous life. He was afraid that they would be as troublesome as women. Dogs were the same, and they all shed their fur and often made themselves dirty. Shed their fur. Murphy understood. She remembered the conversation she had with Yang Yi when she was setting up the vase. She smiled until her eyes were like crescent moons. No, this kind of British shorthair shed very little fur. It would still shed. Besides, shedding fur is very normal. Murphy laughed. We women have such long hair, and we often shed some on the bed. But I don't think it's a big deal. The room is still very clean. She still had the nerve to say that Young E was speechless. When Murphy was at her house, she probably had a nanny to clean up. After she came to his house, wasn't it Young E who cleaned up? Young E had to clean the drain in the bathroom every day. Otherwise, it would be blocked by the black hair, and then the water would flood the Jinshan mountain. Not to mention the bedroom. Before Murphy came, Shi's long hair was often found in this and that corner. Young E was a little suspicious that women were not made of water, but of hair. The so-called cleanliness that Murphy said she saw was the result of his hard work. However, there was no need to care about this. Young E smiled reluctantly and said, "It's okay. Actually don't care that much. Since you and she both like it, then let's keep it." Anyway, there was a shedding creature in the house that needed to be cleaned up, and there were 2 shedding creatures that also needed to be cleaned up. Since there were already 2, what was the harm in adding 3 more? Murphy giggled. She was quite satisfied with Young E's tolerance, just like when they were setting up the vase. Although Young E felt uncomfortable in his heart, he still magnanimously accommodated her. However, Murphy was not a capricious person. If Young E gave in to her, Murphy wanted to return the favor. "The kittens are still young. Let's keep them for a month or 2. When they grow up, we'll put them in the coffee shop and let them play by themselves," Murphy said softly to Young E. "Let me tell you, there are some coffee shops in Binhai that use cats as their theme, and they attract a lot of customers." Young E, of course, knew what Murphy was talking about. Cat-themed coffee shops that specialized in attracting artistic youths who liked to play with cats. In his previous life, he had heard of many of them. There were even maids-themed coffee shops, let alone cat-themed ones. Since they were going to keep cats, the poop picker had to buy equipment for his masters. Under Mo Xiaojuan's directions, Young E drove to the nearby pet street. Murphy's identity was special, so she couldn't get out of the car. She stayed in the car with Shi to play with the kittens. Young E followed Mo Xiaojuan out of the car to shop. There are a lot of things to buy. Xiao AI gave us the food bowls, but there's only a week's worth of cat food, so we have to buy it. We also have to buy cat toilets, cat litter, and toilet mats for cats. You don't want cats to stink up the house, do you? These things need to be taught from a young age. Mo Xiaojuan walked in front, holding a piece of paper and mumbling as she walked. Of course, she was not a qualified cat slave. These were the lessons that Xiao AI had prepared for her. We definitely need cat cages. If they don't listen to us in the future, we can lock them in as punishment. Mo Xiaojuan gloated. We also need cat beds, cat climbing frames, and their toys. Oh right, we have to buy paw sharpeners, cat nail clippers, combs. Yang Yi's temples swelled. Was it so troublesome to keep cats? He didn't know that Xiao AI had vaccinated the kittens before. Otherwise, there would be more troublesome things to do. Just as Yang Yi and Mo Xiaojuan were shopping in the pet shop, Mo Xiaojuan suddenly rolled her eyes. She reached out and pushed Yang Yi, urging him to go to a corner where they could talk in private. "Brother-in-law, are you rich?" Mo Xiaojuan looked at Yang Yi expectantly. Chapter 137. In fact, Yang Yi felt a little awkward being alone with Mo Xiaojuan. Mo Xiaojuan and his predecessor were like fire and water. Mo Xiaojuan even thought that Yang Yi was holding her cousin back. Moreover, Murphy and Yang Yi's relationship was problematic, so her views of Yang Yi had always been very extreme. Yang Yi also did not like this woman who was giving him a hard time as soon as he arrived in this world. However, Mo Xiaojuan was Murphy's cousin. She was half a sister-in-law, so Yang Yi couldn't treat her coldly. Now, Mo Xiaojuan, who had always been at odds with him, actually wanted to talk to him alone. Moreover, she looked like she wanted to discuss something important. This was too strange. Mo Xiaojuan saw that Yang Yi was hesitating and did not say anything. She became anxious. "Brother-in-law, my sister told me that Soldier's Assault and Drawing Sword were both written by you. The 2 best-selling books definitely made you a lot of money." Yang Yi did not care about the money. He was hesitating about how to talk to Mo Xiaowan and what tone to use. It's okay. When the settlement comes this month, I'll probably have an income of more than 7 million. Yang Yi decided to treat Mo Xiaowan as Mo Xiaowan and communicated with her normally. That's a lot. Mo Xiaojuan's eyes lit up. She said, That's enough. Brother-in-law, you just need to save up for 2 or 3 months. Was this girl's tone not deliberately alienating him like before? Yang Yi asked curiously. What are you going to do? It's not what I'm going to do. Mo Xiaowan said excitedly. It's what my sister is going to do. What is Murphy going to do? Yang Yi was a little confused. If Murphy was going to do something, or if she was short of money, why didn't she tell him directly? Why did she have to pass the message through Mo Xiaowan? Yang Yi quickly understood that this was actually a small misunderstanding. Mo Xiaowan shook her head and sighed. Sigh, brother-in-law, you don't even know how my sister is treated by her current management company. Yang Yi really did not know much about Murphy's current situation. He could only tell that Murphy's situation was not good from the emails he sent to her by Mu Xiang. How could a singer collect the songs for an entire album without the company's help? With Mo Xiaojuan's exaggeration, Yang Yi understood the current situation where Murphy was being ostracized by her management company, and the boss's intention of pressuring Murphy to sign a more stringent contract. My sister is a stubborn person. She felt that Sister Ling treated her well in the past, so she didn't want their relationship to be strained. Mo Xiaowan curled her lips and unhappily said, But she doesn't even know what kind of person Sister Ling is. That's right. When my sister had good results, she was the only big star in the company. Of course Sister Ling would protect her in the palm of her hand. Now that my sister's return album is selling poorly, her expression immediately changed. This person is very realistic. Zhen Muqian is young and beautiful, so she wants to push Zhen Muqian onto the stage and kick my sister away. My sister only remembers how others treated her well in the past. She can't see reality. Look at how the company is treating her now. How many performances and jobs have been arranged that my sister doesn't want to go? In the past, as long as my sister hesitated, they wouldn't even dare to mention it a second time. Also, wasn't there a scandal a while ago? It was all arranged by the company in private. Mo Xiaowan hatefully said. Yang Yi deeply frowned. If Mo Xiaowan didn't say it, he really wouldn't have known that Murphy was facing such a situation. He originally thought that the reason why Mo Fei flew around was just because of her job. But now it seems that she was being ordered around by the company like a cow. What do you want me to do? Although Yang Yi was very angry in his heart, he didn't show it. He took a deep breath and then asked in a deep voice. Mo Xiaowan snapped her fingers and said with a face full of excitement, My idea is to let my sister jump out and set up her own studio. Although it's a bit difficult to wake up early, the most important thing is freedom. But my sister isn't willing. She's still hesitant and doesn't want to fall out with Sister Ling. Mo Xiaowan helplessly shrugged. So I want brother-in-law to open the studio and set up the framework first. Then when the contract is about to expire and Sister Ling wants to renew the contract, we'll make it clear to her. Brother-in-law, you might not know, but it's useless no matter how much I say. My sister is very stubborn. But she cares about your words. As long as you persuade her and say that you want to open a husband and wife shop with my sister definitely won't refuse. Mo Xiaowan chuckled and patted Yang Yi's shoulder. Of course it can't be now. We'll have to wait until my sister releases this album. Why wait? Why don't you tell Murphy first and let her terminate the contract with the company and then go to our new studio to release a new album? Yang Yi asked, puzzled. Doesn't it cost money to terminate the contract? Mo Xiaowan rolled her eyes. My sister was a singer back then. The termination fee was 40 million. Do you have 40 million? 40 million was the price of a popular singer 5 or 6 years ago. Because Murphy later retired, the contract hasn't been changed for the time being. If a popular singer didn't have a termination fee of 1 or 200 million in today's skyrocketing prices, she would definitely be a retard. She would be waiting for the industry's giants to covet her. Of course, Murphy's Waterloo was not worth 40 million according to the current prices. I can borrow it and spend the money to terminate the contract. I'll earn it when the money is gone. I don't want to stay in that company and ruin my mood, Yang-yi said indifferently. At worst, he could borrow 40 million from Fu Jun, or sell the film and television copyrights of Soldier Assault and Drawing Sword at a low price. Then, he would bring a few best-selling books over to make money. He had never heard of a money problem that could stump a reincarnated person. Well, brother-in-law, even if you have 40 million, we don't need to spend it here. There's a reason why I don't want my sister to terminate the contract early. Mo Xiaowan explained. First of all, my sister needs to use this album to prove herself. Mu Xiang's songs are very well written. Even if it can't bring my sister back to the heights she had before she retired, I think it shouldn't be difficult to make my sister popular again. However, running a studio isn't something that can be done with money. If you're not an A-list celebrity, it's very difficult to compete with big agencies on your own without the support of popularity. Otherwise, why would many small-time celebrities have to endure the exploitation of agencies, while those who opened their own studios were mostly big stars who had been famous for a long time? Moreover, Tianmei now has the resources we urgently need. If we jump out and open our own studio now, how are we going to record? How are we going to shoot a music video? How are we going to sell the album? What about publicity? Mo Xiaowan said. We're a newly established studio. It's impossible for us to gather so many resources in a short time. Yang Yi had to admit that Mo Xiaojuan's words made sense. So in this year we have to first set up the framework of the studio. I'll gradually invite the professionals I've known over the years to join us, or recruit and spend money to poach people. When my sister's contract ends and she joins brother-in-law's studio, the transition can be completed smoothly, Mo Xiaowan said confidently. Over the years, she hadn't been in the entertainment industry for nothing. She had a lot of resources in her hands, but it would take time to arrange them. Not to mention anything else. Mo Xiaowan had made up her mind to secretly poach people from her old company, and persuade a group of capable and experienced friends like Xiao AI to join them. Course, Mo Xiaowan snorted and said proudly. The most important reason is, how can we run away like this? This album must be released in Tianmei, and we must get good results. When the time comes, they'll be surprised and regret it. Chapter 138. The thing that he had discussed with Mo Xiaowan became the second thing that Yang Yi had hidden from Murphy. Well, it didn't matter if he had too many debts. It didn't matter if he hid one or two things from her. As long as he didn't do anything wrong to Murphy or his own conscience, Yang Yi could still face it calmly. Yang Yi didn't have to worry too much about this. He basically left it to Mo Xiaowan, and he only had to pay for it. Yang Yi liked to leave professional things to professionals. But there were some things that Yang Yi had to do even if he wasn't a professional. For example, building a nest for the new kittens in the house, building a cat tree. Because there were 3 kittens, the cat tree that Yang Yi and the others chose was relatively large. In its original form, it looked like a building in Monument Valley. But before it was assembled, it was just a piece of plank, a tube of cardboard wrapped with hemp rope, and a piece of flannelette. What Yang Yi needed to do was to assemble it in a corner of the living room for the owners to play with in the future. There is no justice. A cat can enjoy such luxurious treatment. Yang Yi sighed secretly. He was tying the soft flannelette hammock. There were a total of 3 hammocks on the cat tree. Some were tied low and some were tied high, but they were all like swings swaying. Yang Yi felt that if he became a cat, like Zheng Tan, sleeping in a hammock with his paws under his belly and his eyes closed, it would be very comfortable. On the cat tree there was a small house similar to the Great Wall. It had openings on both sides and was at a medium height. It was said that cats liked to climb into these small dark houses, and the smaller they were, the more they liked to climb into them. At the very top, there was a platform for cats to jump onto. In winter they could install cat nests made of flannel. That way, they could jump up step by step and nestle comfortably, looking down at the poop scoopers with disdain, however. Although Young E was secretly muttering about these cats' good lives, he still welcomed their arrival in his heart. Because Murphy and she were very happy. Meow meow, meow meow. Two strange meows, one big and one small, were heard, but they weren't meows of kittens. Instead, it was Mo 3-year-old and she 4-year-old who were playing with the kittens in the corrugated cardboard box. "Mom, can I hug the kittens?" She's two big eyes seemed to twinkle like little stars as she looked at the kittens happily. "Sure." Murphy gently pulled apart the kittens that were huddled together and took out her favorite one. The remaining two kittens saw that their companions had been picked up, so they raised their heads and meowed. No one knew if they were meowing, worried about their companions, or envious of their companions' treatment. They also wanted to be picked up and touched by the poop scooper. She stood up nervously. Although she had been looking forward to hugging the kitten, when it was time to do it, the little girl was a little scared and nervous. "I'm scared." She was so anxious that she wanted to cry. She stamped her feet and said to her mother, "Don't be scared. The kitten is very gentle. Come sit down first." Murphy smiled as she guided the little girl. "You use both hands like Mom and hug it under its armpits." She did as she was told. Although the little girl was so nervous that her body was stiff when the kitten was handed to her by her mother, the kitten stayed in her arms obediently and even turned its head to look at her flexibly. She was very happy. "Mom, look, it's not scared," she said happily. Of course, she still didn't dare to move at all. "Of course, it likes you very much," Murphy said with a smile. Then Murphy taught she how to stroke the kitten. Use one hand to hug its stomach, then use your right hand to scratch its head, especially behind its ears, and here, under its neck. Murphy smiled. "Look, it likes it when you touch it like this." She used her little finger to gently scratch the kitten behind its ears. The kitten was so comfortable that it closed its eyes. "How do you know it likes it?" She asked, a little confused. "Look, its tail is already up and swaying gently. This means that it feels very happy and is acting coquettishly with you," Murphy said with a smile. Note 1. The mother and daughter played with the kitten for a while. She couldn't hold it for too long, so she handed the kitten back to her mother and played with the other two kittens. But at this time, Murphy suddenly thought of something. She smiled and shouted in the direction of Young E. "Young E, come here." Maybe Murphy was afraid of scaring the kitten, so she didn't shout very loudly. Or maybe Young E didn't hear her because of the noise from the TV. Young E was busy assembling the cat tree and didn't move. She, go and call your papa over." Murphy held the kitten and pointed to her daughter. She reluctantly looked away from the kitten. She ran over and shouted like her mother, "Young E, come here." Hearing her daughter call him that, Murphy chuckled. Her smile was like a flower. Young E was pulled over by his daughter in confusion. As he walked over, he said, "Cece, Daddy told you to remember. Every time you finish playing with a kitten you have to wash your hands, and you have to wash them with soap." Murphy patted the space beside her and asked Young E to sit down. In fact, it was a little dirty to sit directly on the ground. But Young E still sat down. She saw this and quickly squeezed between her father and mother. She sat down close to them, forcing Young E to move his butt to make some space. Otherwise the little guy would be squashed. "There are 3 kittens here," Murphy said with a smile. She, me and you. The 3 of us each name a cat we like, okay? Okay. She raised her hand excitedly. She pointed to the smallest one in the box and said, "I like it the most. I want to call it Xiao Guai." She had just held the biggest one, but she still felt that it was too heavy and didn't like it. The smallest one felt the best, and it was the most docile in Shishi's hands. It lay there obediently and let the little girl touch it. Such an obedient kitten should be called Xiao Guai. Murphy nodded. She combed the fur of the kitten in her arms and said excitedly, "Then I want to name this one. It's called Little Gray, because its fur is grayish blue." Then why not call it Little Gray? Or Big Gray Blue? Because it was the biggest of the three kittens. Yang-yi secretly criticized Murphy's naming skills, but he didn't have time to think too much. Murphy was urging him to name the remaining kitten. She also looked at her father with her eyes wide open. She was very curious about what her father would name it. Yang-yi actually couldn't think of a name, but he couldn't persuade Murphy. Moreover, this was a big event for the whole family. Yang-yi couldn't find an excuse to avoid it. He still had to seriously consider how to name it. Yang-yi picked up the remaining kitten and tried to touch it. It was a soft little guy, and its fur was actually very soft. Looking at it opening its pink little mouth to meow at him, Yang-yi unexpectedly found that he actually quite liked this feeling. Kittens were the cutest. So what name should he give it? Note 1. Cats are different from dogs. When a cat wags its tail widely, it means that it is very anxious. When it wags its tail slightly, it means that it is interested in something. If it wags its tail to its owner, it means that it trusts the owner very much and is acting spoiled. Chapter 139. What should he name it? Of course, he couldn't name it Black Charcoal. Yang-yi didn't want to be like his daughter and Murphy, who were so bad at naming things. If he wanted to name it, he had to name it something deep. After some careful consideration, Yang-yi finally had an idea. Yang-yi gently stroked the kitten's head and smiled. I want to call it Duo-Duo. Duo-Duo. How much is Duo-Duo? Murphy asked in surprise. No, it's Duo-Duo next to the word mouth. Yang-yi shook his head. There's still a lot of Duo-Duo next to the word mouth. Murphy giggled and looked at Yang-yi proudly. Her eyes seemed to be saying, I've seen through you. Murphy didn't know Yang-yi too well. She knew that Yang-yi liked the number Asher. She knew that 2 kittens were a pair, and there were 3 kittens, so there was obviously one more. So it was called Duo-Duo. No, it was Duo-Duo. This late-stage OCD patient still wanted to cover it up. Yang-yi's thoughts were exposed. He stared at her helplessly and amusedly. What should he do? Yang-yi wanted to tell Murphy. A woman like you who knows too much would have been killed in the past. Murphy stared back fearlessly with a smile in her eyes as if to say, You're still threatening me? You've got guts. But at this time she had something to say. The little girl pouted and said, No, Papa can't call it Duo-Duo. Why not? Yang-yi asked, puzzled. Murphy was also a little surprised. Because it's different from the names Mom and I named it. She named it Xiao Guai, Mom named it Xiao Guai, and Papa named it Xiao Guai. She said. Murphy rolled her eyes at Yang-yi again, which made Yang-yi confused. What's wrong? Little did he know that Murphy was suspecting that she had been living with her father for so long that she had developed an obsessive-compulsive disorder. Even when she came up with names, she couldn't break the cue. This won't do. It's all right. Everyone can come up with their own names. Murphy comforted her daughter and smiled. This is the rule. So, the kitten that your papa likes is called Dodola. This would not do. If she really had the tendency to have obsessive-compulsive disorder, she would have to change it and get used to being disorderly and asymmetrical. It turned out that she did not have obsessive-compulsive disorder. She thought about it carefully and felt that her mother's words made sense, so she nodded and said, All right then. Xiao Guai, and Xiao Guai, the 3 British Shorthairs who were curiously looking at their new environment, were going to settle down in Yang-yi's house. Fatty, called 2 people over to help me move the props. In the film and television base in the northern suburbs of Beijing, a little fatty in fake armor stood up and called 2 acquaintances over. He walked over to a young man who had a pen in his ear and was waving a hard folder in his hand, ordering the extras around. Brother Bin, we're here. The little fatty said with a smile. If you need anything, just tell us what to do. The young man nodded with satisfaction, but he wouldn't be nice to the little fatty because of this. He waved his hand and said, Go, bring that box of props and let today's extras change into them. Although it was a hot day and he was sweating profusely, the little fatty still diligently went to move the things. This was Guozi. He had only been in Beijing for a few days, but with his eloquence and diligence, he had already stood out from the rest of the extras who could only lie down. He was now a senior extras who could stand up and even have a few scenes. While moving the things, his companions whispered into Guozi's ear, "Xiao Gua, why do you think Big Bin is working so hard today? He usually doesn't have such a loud voice." These companions were all older than Guozi, but not by much. They were all mountain children who didn't go to university and came to Beijing to work. Later they found out that playing extras could be quite profitable, so they came to Beijing to pass the time. Their personalities were simple and honest, and their IQ was also the simple type. When they saw that Guozi didn't mind their Mandarin accent and didn't mind that they were from the countryside, they started to play together. In addition, Guozi was quick-witted and had ideas. After taking them on a few trips, they were able to grab good scenes. Thus, they faintly regarded Guozi as their leader. Of course, they still called him Xiao Gua, and Guozi didn't mind. "I heard that a big director came here today to shoot the main character scene, so he worked a little harder." He wanted the big director to see his hard work. Guozi curled his lips. His companions understood and looked at Guozi with admiration. They felt that he was really amazing to be able to find out such big news. In fact, they didn't bring their own ears and treated playing extras as idling. When they were resting, they really hid under the shade of the trees and lay down like corpses. Guozi stayed in the sunniest place, but he was able to eavesdrop on the conversations of a few special personnel or small supporting roles. Who knew how much information he had gathered in the middle of it? Not long after, there was a commotion on the set. Other than those useless extras, the other actors and staff ran over eagerly. "Director Chen, you're here. Teacher Chen, you've worked hard. It's such a hot day. Director Chen, look at this." Those who greeted him, those who tried to curry favor with him, and those who reported their work actively rushed to talk. It was as noisy as a market. Guozi also looked at him from afar with a few of his friends. Of course, they didn't dare to go up. "How impressive," one of his companions said enviously. "If only I could be like him." Another one of his companions also muttered, imagining the scene of him being surrounded by a large group of people. Guozi was also muttering, but he wasn't envious. Instead, he lamented, "Director Chen Fengchen, when can I act for him? It'll be great. Extras don't count, I have to be the male lead." That's right, it was Chen Fengchen. Today, old Master Chen was dressed in a much more energetic and imposing manner than when he was in the bookstore. He wore a round-necked shirt with a black leather jacket and black sunglasses under his bowler hat. If it weren't for his white beard, it would be impossible to tell his age. People relied on their clothes and temperament. The old man had both today, so his aura was naturally more like a great director's. Okay, stop hanging around here. Do what you need to do. Old Lu, see if the preparations are done. I'll give you 15 minutes. We'll start shooting in 15 minutes. Chen Fengchen was indeed a great director, but his temper was also very bad. He didn't give them any face as he yelled. However, the effect was particularly good. In an instant everyone left. Chen Fengchen sat on his own director's stool. No one dared to sit next to him. They wanted to be more diligent, so they ran past him from time to time. However, Chen Fengchen didn't even look at them. He was thinking about something with a frown. He had read the 2 books, Soldier's Assault and Drawing Sword, and he liked them very much. Just by reading the books, he already had the image of a TV show in his mind. The experienced director Chen was keenly aware that these 2 works were particularly suitable for a TV show, so he couldn't wait to contact the publishing house to discuss the copyright with the author. However, he didn't expect the response he got was that the author couldn't leave and could only wait until September to come to Capital to discuss with him. Chen Fengchen didn't blame Yang Yi. After all, Yang Yi had shown enough respect. He said he would come to Capital. However, he was anxious. Although the world didn't lack literary works, good stories, and good scripts, one thing remained unchanged. Good things would always be coveted and fought over by many. These two books had been on the market for some time and they were in the limelight. Chen Fengchen couldn't guarantee that other directors and companies didn't take a fancy to these two books. In the face of cruel market competition, Chen Fengchen's seniority was obviously useless no matter how old he was. If he waited until September, it would be too late. Chen Fengchen was thinking about this problem while waiting for filming to start. No, I can't wait. If he doesn't come, can't I take the initiative to look for him? I'm definitely going to get this copyright. Chapter 140. It was another morning. Zhongqing, a small city in the south, was slowly awakened by a warm song. A small city in the south, time passes slowly. Every time I come back here, you are so peaceful. Young E was humming to Murphy's guitar accompaniment. Although it was a warm song, his voice was still slightly heavy. This was the first time they woke up in the morning to practice singing. Of course, how could Murphy wake up earlier than Yang E? Yang E would always go out in the middle of the night to run, practice, and buy groceries before waking her up from her deep sleep. They didn't go anywhere. After closing the bedroom window, the two of them went to the balcony. Murphy leaned against the railing of the balcony while Yang E stood against the wall. He looked at the sun shining through Murphy's hair, which was blown up by the wind and dyed golden. They had to start singing in the morning. After some practice, Murphy asked Yang E to sing a song first. Yang E didn't know many songs in this world. He chose A Small Town in the South, that Guazi had performed for him before. Surprisingly, Murphy liked this kind of jazz ballad and was very familiar with this song. Therefore, she snatched the guitar and took the initiative to accompany Yang E. I'll sing this song alone here. You won't know. Yang E finally finished singing. He was still a little intoxicated. It felt good to sing to himself, however. Murphy shook her head and mercilessly said, Yang E, your voice isn't suitable for singing this kind of song. Yang E was dumbfounded. Your voice belongs to the tenor category. If you sing a high-pitched song, you might be able to control it more easily. However, you can't sing A Small Town in the South. Your voice is very deep and heavy. You won't be able to sing the refreshing ballad, Murphy explained patiently. Yang E knew about this. Back when he was in the army, his body was always the loudest when he shouted. But Yang E didn't like high-pitched songs. Many high-pitched songs were mainly about showing off. How could they convey emotions and reveal true feelings? Take the folk songs that Yang E liked as an example. How many of them required him to raise his head and use a very penetrating high-pitched voice to express his feelings? How can I widen my vocal range? Yang E thought for a while and asked Murphy, Your voice is very good. Isn't it reported that your voice can cross 3 octaves? You know about this? Murphy looked at Yang E in surprise. Among her songs, there were no high-pitched songs that required her to release so much energy. However, there was once a music program where she accepted the challenge arranged by the host and really sang an octave across the stage. But there's no harm in telling you. I can indeed sing 3 octaves. But this is on the basis of an innate wide vocal range and practice. Murphy smiled and said, My mother knows music very well. So when I was young, she found that my voice was very good. So she made me do a lot of special practice. Your voice is basically fixed now. It's very difficult to change it through practice. Murphy hesitated for a moment, but still told Yang E the cruel truth. After all, he was an old man in his 30s. Yang E smiled bitterly. Murphy comforted him. But it doesn't matter. Singing a song well has nothing to do with your vocal range. It has to do with the quality of your voice. Yang E, your voice is very good. It's bright and clear. If you sing a suitable song, it will have a good effect. Yang E frowned slightly and said, If I want to sing this song well, is there no other way except to change to another song? Could it be that after rebirth, He could only listen to the songs he liked. Young-yi was not reconciled. Murphy shook her head and said with a smile, "You misunderstood me. And your own thinking is also wrong. To sing a song well, do you have to sing it according to the original singer's style? Even in this small town in the south, you can change to a style that you can control. You don't have to deliberately imitate Chow Fong. Try more. You can always sing other people's songs with your own flavor." Murphy felt that her words alone were not convincing enough. She picked up the guitar again, gently plucked the strings and said, "I'll sing a part. Listen to it. The small town in the south is not bright. Every time I come back here I feel calm." Murphy's ethereal voice sounded, but it stopped abruptly after just a part. "This is the original version." Murphy stopped and said to Young-yi. Then she played a short prelude and continued to hum. "Hey!" Young-yi's ears were still very sharp. He could hear that Murphy's rhythm suddenly became lively. Although it was still the original voice, Young-yi seemed to feel that if he closed his eyes and listened, he would feel that the singer was a girl who loved to laugh. Her voice was less sad, more lively, and not too sweet. It was just right. Note 1. But unfortunately, Murphy also sang a part and then stopped. She then changed to another style of singing. But this time, the rhythm was basically the same as the original version. But Murphy's voice was lower, slightly hoarse, and the vicissitudes of life hit the face. Note 2. How is it? Does it mean that the same song can have a different feeling when sung in different ways? Mo Fei said to Young-yi with a smile. Well, Young-yi wanted to say something but stopped. Murphy still saw it and said, "If you have any doubts, just say it. What's there to be embarrassed about?" Young-yi's old face was slightly red. He pointed to the guitar and said, "Can you sing again? Just use your second style of singing. I think it's pretty good." Murphy naturally satisfied his request. Her slender fingers plucked the strings and she sang with a light rhythm. "I'm here singing this song by myself. People just smile, oh smile." Young-yi listened silently. He could hear that in the second smile, Murphy was somewhat wantonly displaying her talent and singing with a playful flavor. At the same time, he saw Murphy's smiling eyes. It was like the canal behind her sparkling under the morning sun, as if there was a soft autumn wave flowing. Young-yi thought of a poem that wasn't really a poem. Instantly beautiful eyes flowed with flowing water. Words and laughter were inseparable. Note 3. Perhaps, the woman who was written by Tao Yuanming and sang with him was also as intelligent and beautiful as Murphy. With so many thoughts running through his mind, Young-yi also forgot to hide it. Mo Fei's cheeks blushed because of his infatuated gaze, and she even sang a little off-key in the end, but she didn't notice it, and Young-yi didn't notice it either. "Well, it's your turn to listen to me sing. Help me see if there's anything I need to improve." After Murphy finished singing, in order to hide her heart that was beating like a deer, she pretended to be serious as she shook the stack of manuscripts in her hand and said. She also wanted to practice the song that Mu Xiang wrote for her. The night before when she sang In My Voice, Murphy unexpectedly received some good suggestions. So, Murphy felt that Young-yi still had his own unique talent in music. "That's not a problem." Young-yi restrained his thoughts and said confidently. Note 1. If you want to feel the tube, you can go to a small town in the south of cloud music and listen to the version sung by a singer named Shiyu. Note 2. Everyone listened to Li Wenxiang's version. Note 3. This poem came from Tao Yuanming's Ode to Leisure. It means that, when looking around, beautiful eyes flowed with autumn waves, sometimes smiling and speaking without distracting the mind of playing the music. There was a saying that this was written for Di Shi, whom he married after his wife died. Di Shi was a virtuous woman and had the same interests as Tao Yuanming. They could endure hardships, the husband plowing in front, the wife hoeing behind. Chapter 141. It was the last 10 days of August, and Zhongqing Media University was getting more and more lively. Students who went home for the holidays were coming back one after another. Ding Xiang was one of them. She spent the summer working, but she took time to go home to visit her grandmother who had suddenly fallen ill. She didn't stay for long. She reunited with her grandmother for 2 days, then hurried down the mountain and rushed back to Zhongqing. Back at school, Ding Xiang sat alone in the dormitory and breathed a sigh of relief. But she didn't dare to slack off. She took off her shirt, opened the tightly sewn needle and took out the 4,000 yuan note that she had been carrying all the way back. She wanted to take the money back to bring her grandmother down the mountain to the city for a checkup and treatment, but her grandmother refused, saying that the barefoot doctors in the village were better than those outside. Of course, Ding Xiang knew that her grandmother didn't want to waste the money that her granddaughter had worked so hard to earn. But Ding Xiang couldn't persuade her grandmother. Seeing that her grandmother seemed to be in better spirits after drinking a few bowls of black herbal medicine, she had to take the risk and bring the money back to school. Don't ask why she didn't deposit the money in the bank. How could there be a bank in the mountains? And on the way back there were all kinds of people in the cars and trains. Who knew if there were pickpockets staring at you? Ding Xiang didn't dare to reveal the huge sum of 4,000 yuan. She held it in her arms all the way back to school, and only dared to take it out. In front of the school ATM, Ding Xiang deposited the money into her card, but the girl's eyes were filled with worry. With the money she had saved from her job in the past year and the scholarship, Ding Xiang had enough for the next school year's tuition fees. But it was just enough. Suddenly going home to visit her grandmother, the unexpected expenses of the car fare and expenses made Ding Xiang feel strapped for cash. The balance shown in the ATM was 8,102 yuan. Including the pitiful dozens of yuan in her wallet, Ding Xiang's entire fortune was less than 8,200 yuan. That was to say, after the school deducted 8,000 yuan from her tuition fees at the beginning of the next month, she would be left with very little money. It was simply not enough to cover the next month's food expenses. What should I do? She took out the bank card and carefully put it away. The tanned and thin Miao girl was worried. She definitely had to find a part-time job to earn money, but the problem was that part-time workers were also paid monthly for their services. How could Ding Xiang survive until the day when the money would be distributed a month later? Do you want to see if there are any temporary jobs available? Ding Xiang pondered as she walked towards the dormitory. Although it's a little hard and the pay is less, at least we can get through this difficulty first, right? Ding Xiang. At first, Ding Xiang was preoccupied with her own thoughts and didn't pay attention to it. She only heard it when the person shouted a few times. She turned around and saw a short-haired, fair-skinned girl running towards her. Ding Xiang hid the sadness in her heart and smiled brightly, revealing her white teeth. "Senior Sister Mao. Sorry I didn't hear you." "It's okay." Mao Peifu waved her hand indifferently and asked, "Ding Xiang, when did you come back? How is Grandma's condition? Are you all right?" "I'm fine. I just got back to school," Ding Xiang said. Although her skin was a little dark, she was full of smiles, giving people a positive and cheerful feeling. Mao Peifu smiled and said, "That's good. All right, this year's welcoming ceremony is about to start. Can you come over tomorrow and help me?" Mao Peifu was the new vice president of their school's student union. Last year when Ding Xiang just came to school, she was the one who volunteered to welcome the new students. She had a good relationship with the new students and liked the hardworking Ding Xiang from the bottom of her heart. She had always wanted to bring Ding Xiang into the student union, but unfortunately, Ding Xiang was busy working to earn her school fees and living expenses after school, so she didn't have time to participate in student activities. But if there was a chance, Mao Peifu would often bring Ding Xiang to participate in some paid activities. On one hand, it was to let her junior sister earn some extra money. On the other hand, she sincerely hoped that Ding Xiang could gain more experience and make more connections. But this time's welcoming ceremony didn't have any remuneration. Mao Peifu was really too busy, and the student union didn't have enough manpower, so she wanted to ask Ding Xiang to help organize it. This was something that Ding Xiang had agreed to 2 months ago. At that time, Ding Xiang didn't expect that her grandmother would suddenly fall sick. Okay. Ding Xiang agreed. How could she go back on her word when she had promised someone? But this way, she wouldn't be able to do her part-time job during the day. Yang Yi, come and take a look at this kindergarten. What do you think? Murphy held a stack of flyers in her hand and walked to the door of the study room. She called out to Yang Yi, who was quietly reading a book. After the conversation with Mo Xiaowan, he had an additional burden of earning money on his shoulders. So Yang Yi had been thinking about what new book he wanted to start. However, now that he had an answer, Yang Yi needed to add some relevant knowledge. After all, this time he was no longer copying the entire book. Instead, he was using his own writing to adapt the video story into a book without any reference. Murphy, on the other hand, was very busy. She asked someone to get a big box of kindergarten flyers and decided to do a good selection to ensure that her daughter could enter a kindergarten that was satisfactory to her. Of course, this satisfactory referred to Murphy's own satisfaction. What's so special about this? Yang Yi put down the book in his hand and followed Murphy to the living room. Shishi was sitting next to the cat bed. She was playing with her Xiao Guai and the other two kittens with the cat teaser that her father had bought. In front of the cat teaser was a small cloth bag that was made into the shape of a mouse. Then, a clump of furry artificial feathers appeared behind the cat teaser. It was very sturdy. The staff was right. No matter if it was a big cat or a small cat, they had no resistance to the cat teaser. Shishi shook the cat teaser left and right. The three kittens also shook their little heads left and right. Then, as long as one of them jumped out and scratched, the other two would definitely follow suit. Giggle. She was playing more happily than the kittens. She couldn't stop giggling. Yang Yi and Murphy shook their heads. They didn't want to disturb the little girl's fun. They went to study the kindergarten. This kindergarten is bilingual, and it's relatively close to Zhongqing Media University. It'll be very convenient for you to pick up Shishi, Murphy said. Originally, Murphy wanted Shishi to go to kindergarten in the wealthy district of Binhai. But later, she considered that Yang Yi would need some time to drive to Binhai, and it would be very troublesome in the future. So, Murphy took a step back and tried to choose the nearest kindergarten. Yang Yi looked at the flyer. He frowned and said, "This kindergarten said that they will hire college students to teach the children part-time. It's not a full-time kindergarten education. Isn't this misleading the children?" "No, that's good. College students have a wide range of knowledge and solid English skills. She can learn a lot from them." Murphy laughed. However, when he heard her praising the college student, Yang Yi fell silent. Chapter 142. She was so happy these days. She had Papa, Mom, and 3 new friends at home. She felt as if her heart was soaked in honey every day. It was always sweet. And before the 3 kittens came, what she looked forward to the most every day was waiting for her father to tell her the story of the monkey at night. It would be best if he could play with the Jingu Bang for a while. By the way, after listening to Sun Wukong's story, she asked her father curiously one morning, "Papa, why can't she learn the Jingu Bang like Sun Wukong?" Yang Yi answered her like this. "The Jingu Bang is for boys to play with. It's so rude. The sword she learned is a girl's sword. Dad named it the Jade Girl Sword Technique. He learned it from a master named Xiao Longnu. After she learned it, it looks better than the Jingu Bang. It's soft and agile, elegant and graceful, just like a little fairy." "So Shishi, do you want to be a little fairy or a little monkey?" "I want to be a little fairy." Shishi chose the former without hesitation. After the arrival of the 3 kittens, the attractiveness of her father's story seemed to have decreased a lot. Although Cece still wanted to listen to her father's story before she went to sleep, she usually wouldn't pester her father to tell her stories. Instead, she would go to the kittens whenever she had the chance. "Xiao Guai, you have to get it this time." She murmured and lowered her voice, as if she only wanted her Xiao Guai to hear her. She raised the cat stick high, but it was too high for the kittens to reach. they could only look up at it. The biggest kitten, Little Gray, tried to stand on its hind legs. It tried to grab it with its front legs, but of course it could not reach it. Besides, the kitten's limbs were not strong enough. It struggled for a while before it gave up and squatted with the other kittens. 1, 2, 3. Shishi's voice was crisp and clear, as if the kittens could understand her. She repeated the number until 3, and then she put down the cat stick that was shaking left and right. She threw the whole cat stick on the ground. Although Shishi was used to being with kittens, she was still a little timid when she saw their sharp teeth. It was still Xiao Hui who was strong and strong. He was the first to stand up and use both of his claws to push the small rat-shaped bag to the ground. Then, he opened his small mouth and tried his best to gnaw on it. Dodo's movements were a little slower, but with the advantage of its body, it jumped and snatched the position. It followed beside Little Gray, baring its sharp teeth and biting its furry feathers. Xiao Guai was slower. It couldn't grab it, and it couldn't squeeze past the two brother cat and sister cat. It could only circle around anxiously. In the end, it chose to use its little paws to push the long plastic stick. However, obviously, the plastic stick was not as tempting as the feathers and the small bag, so Xiao Guai didn't bite it. The kind little girl was still worried that her Xiao Guai would be upset. She reached out to hold the kitten, scratched the fur behind its ears and comforted it. "Okay, Xiao Guai, it's okay." However, Lil Guai did not appreciate it. It struggled in Cece's arms and called out softly, "Mimi, do you want to try again? Then you have to do your best." She took the cat stick back from Xiao Hui and Dodo's mouths with great difficulty. The process was no different from a tug-of-war. Although the kittens looked soft and weak, they still had a lot of bite power. "Let's have another competition," she said as if she was playing house. She reached out and tapped each kitten's head, as if they could understand her. She is about to start." The little girl waved the cat stick gently and kindly reminded the kittens. The kittens looked at the cat stick eagerly. Even Xiao Guai was restlessly stepping on its paws, ready to go. If they could speak, they would definitely tell Shishi, "Don't waste time, let's start." Shishi threw the cat stick again, but this time the position she threw was obviously biased. Xiao Guai didn't even need to waste any effort. It turned around and pounced on the small bag, but it was more interested in the feathers. It held the small bag with its two front paws and nibbled on the feathers. "Yes, Xiao Guai won." She clapped her hands happily. She happily hugged Xiao Guai again and rubbed her face against the kitten's forehead affectionately. "My Xiao Guai is the best. Xiao Hui and Dodo are also very good." Shishi was still worried that the other two kittens would be unhappy, so she gave them a thumbs up. However, Xiao Hui and Dodo didn't care about Shishi at this time. They found that the treasure that Xiao Guai had snatched was now free, so they couldn't wait to pounce on it. The two kittens even fought over it. Xiao Guai was the most miserable. It took a lot of effort to snatch the toys from the two kittens that were bigger than it, but before it could enjoy it, it was picked up by its little owner. The kitten could only meow pitifully. However, at this time, Shishi suddenly heard her mother crying, "Yang-yi, you bastard!" The little girl blinked her big eyes in confusion. Just as she turned her head, she saw her mother wiping the tears from the corners of her eyes and running past her. Murphy ran into the master bedroom and slammed the door with a bang. Yang-yi, who was originally enthusiastically discussing kindergarten issues with Murphy on the sofa, stood up, but in the end he still frowned and sat back down. Although Shishi was still young, she still noticed that there was something wrong between her parents. She quickly carried Xiao Guai and walked to her father's side. Xiao Guai's helpless and conflicted cry brought Yang-yi back to reality. He looked at his daughter who was looking at him timidly, and his eyes gradually became gentle. "Don't worry, you can play with Xiao Guai and the others." Yang-yi reached out and rubbed his daughter's head, and said gently, "Papa, why is Mom crying?" Shishi felt that her father's aura had calmed down, so she was not so nervous. She leaned on her father and asked. Yang Yi was silent for a while and said vaguely, Because there are some issues that I need to talk to your mother about. Maybe there's a misunderstanding. Xiao Guai struggled impatiently, so she could only put it on the ground and let it play with its brothers and sisters. She didn't have time to play with Xiao Guai. Shi's little head was working hard. She used her own way to understand this sudden competition for points. The little girl always felt that Papa's temper was the best, and he had never been fierce to Shi. But Mom would. It must be that Mom was not obedient and made Papa angry. However, Shi really did not want her parents to quarrel, because her parents had quarreled before, and it was very scary. After that, her mother was not willing to talk to her father anymore. Shi was very scared. She did not want to go back to how it was before. She did not want her parents to live separately, and she could only see one of them forever. That would not be happy at all. The little girl pulled her father's hand and said in a pleading tone, Papa, don't be angry with Mom, okay? Mom is as obedient as she, and will be obedient in the future. Chapter 143. Yang Yi, you bastard. Murphy's scolding wasn't wrong at all. What he said was really too much. About 10 minutes ago, Murphy was discussing the conditions of the kindergarten with Yang Yi. She was very satisfied with the teaching conditions of one of the kindergartens because the teachers were all university students. Murphy felt that they could let Shi learn more. Is education really that important? Yang Yi suddenly asked. He had been holding this question in his heart for a long time, or it could be said that his predecessor had always been very concerned about it. Although these days of peaceful but happy days had almost made him forget this contradiction, Murphy's words now made the covered crack resurface again. Murphy still didn't understand what Yang Yi was asking. She thought they were still talking about the kindergarten. She smiled and said, Of course, don't tell me you want a teacher who hasn't studied to teach your daughter. I don't have a university degree. I didn't even finish high school. Yang Yi raised his head, and his eyes were a little indifferent. Is it that I'm not qualified to be Shi's father? Murphy was choked by Yang Yi's words. She was stunned for a while before she said, Why do you say that? Why do you say you're not qualified? What does this have to do with education? You're Shi's father, her biological father. Murphy still didn't understand why Yang Yi's tone suddenly became cold, but she felt like her most precious thing was being questioned, and the grievance in her heart spontaneously arose. Biological father. Yang Yi furrowed his brows. Because I'm her biological father, so you want to be with me? Yang Yi felt that since they were talking about this issue, he might as well lay it out and say all the doubts in his heart. Murphy looked at Yang Yi in shock. Yang Yi, a guy who had never been in a relationship before, honestly continued. I've read an article saying that a father's love is very important when a girl is growing up. To be precise, this was an article that combined gossip and child growth studies. Using a female singer's tragic relationships where she met scumbags and had her privacy exposed after breaking up as an example, it talked about how a girl who lacked fatherly love had a high chance of meeting scumbags. A father was the first man a daughter came into contact with. If a girl could receive her father's care and love from a young age, then when she grew up, she would be able to handle relationships with ease. She might even use her outstanding father as a template to find a boyfriend. However, if they lacked this important emotion from a young age and had never received fatherly love, then they would have an excessive desire and dependence for love. As long as someone treated them a little better, they would be obedient to him. Obviously, this was very dangerous. The above content was what Yang Yi had read from the article. Naturally, he didn't want Shi to have the same tragedy as that female singer, so Yang Yi used everything he had to pamper his daughter and give her the best fatherly love in the world. However, the problem now wasn't Shi, but his relationship with Murphy. This question had troubled Yang Yi's predecessor for a long time, and now Yang Yi also wanted to know the answer. Where did the relationship between him and Murphy come from? Was it true love? Or was it a sacrifice, made by Murphy simply because she wanted her daughter to have a father. Therefore, Yang Yi asked straightforwardly, "You want to create a good environment for Shi and give Shi a complete family, so you're willing to put down your prejudice against my lack of education, put away your contempt for my lack of money, and be with me hypocritically?" These words were too much. Yang Yi was completely standing in his own point of view, showing off his inner pride and questioning Murphy. Murphy couldn't imagine that Yang Yi would say this. It was almost an insult to her character, and the grievances in her heart burst out. She couldn't speak at all. She just wanted to scold Yang Yi as a bastard, so she turned around and ran back to the bedroom. However, the moment she turned around, Murphy couldn't hold back her tears of grievance, and they burst out from the corners of her eyes. "Bastard, big bastard. I don't want to talk to him anymore." The atmosphere in the house suddenly became strange. Murphy locked herself in the room, and she sat timidly on the side, hugging her pillow. She wasn't in the mood to play with the kittens, nor was she in the mood to watch cartoons. The little girl turned her head to look at her father from time to time. The word worry hung on her little face, and her beautiful brows were slightly furrowed. She was just like Sister Lin, and people couldn't help but feel pity for her. However, she didn't dare to disturb her father. This kind of feeling wasn't happy at all. This time, it was Yang Yi's own thoughts that floated in his heart. He felt inexplicably flustered, as if he was going to lose Murphy. Although the knot hadn't been untied yet, Yang Yi himself regretted it. Why did he bring it up? Wasn't it good to be muddle-headed? The memories of the past few days kept coming back to him. "Hey, you're back? What flowers did you buy?" Murphy's bright smile was like ripples of water. She rolled up her trousers, and her white and smooth calves and her exquisite and cute feet seemed to set off the brilliance. "Let's walk in front, ignore him." It was a walk on the dam after dinner in the evening. Murphy's back was slender and graceful, and her hair that fluttered in the wind was dyed a beautiful red in the afterglow of the setting sun. If you want to practice your voice, first feel how my vocal cords vibrate when I speak. In the morning, Murphy took Yang Yi's hand, raised his index finger, and pressed it on her throat. Yang Yi forgot what he was doing and just stared at Murphy. Her neck was very thin, and her skin was as white as snow. When his finger touched it, it felt as smooth as jade. However, Murphy's serious look was as if she was bathing in holy light. Although Yang Yi could see the faint scenery under her exquisite collarbone, he still didn't dare to profane this sincerity. "Did I say something that hurt you?" Yang Yi thought silently. Really? Now that he had calmed down, Yang Yi realized that he didn't think through what he said at that time. Fake affection. "Because I'm your biological father, so you want to be with me?" Regardless of whether what he said was right or not, these words shouldn't have come out of his mouth. It hurt her self-esteem too much. "What exactly do you want?" Yang Yi asked himself a question that he hadn't thought about carefully. Could it be that he wanted Murphy to admit that he was as despicable as Yang Yi thought, and then force Murphy to leave? Course not. Yang Yi liked the feeling of being with Murphy, especially after these days of contact. They had more and more in common and more happiness. How could he bear to let Murphy leave? But why did he say such things? Could Murphy still have a way out? Perhaps he wanted Murphy to admit that she wasn't, and then the two of them could be together without any grudges. But after saying these words, how could Murphy not care? How could she not be sad? Even if the grudges between them were resolved, wouldn't there be a crack in her heart? Yang Yi really regretted it. In his mind, the image of Murphy crying but determined to leave appeared. Yang Yi's heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. "You have to do something," Yang Yi said to himself in his heart. Chapter 144. Murphy ran back and cried on the bed, feeling wronged. There was only one thought left in her mind. Really, don't bother with him anymore. This guy is still so infuriating. He hasn't changed at all. In fact, Yang Yi wasn't any better in the past. In fact, he was even worse than today. But in the past, Murphy wasn't so wrong that she cried. She was just angry and annoyed. Today's grievance was mainly because she had already accepted Young-E in her heart. She also liked his usual meticulous doting. So now that Young-E suddenly threw a tantrum, it was hard for her to accept. After some time, Murphy stopped crying. She was still in her original position, lying on the bed in a daze. No one knew what she was thinking. Knock, knock, knock. Suddenly there was a light knock on the door. Murphy came back to her senses. She turned over absent-mindedly and stared at the bedroom door. "Murphy, it's me." Young-Ye's deep voice sounded from outside. "It was my fault just now. I went a little overboard with my words." Murphy pursed her lips, feeling wronged. She couldn't help but cry. "It was indeed my fault, but I didn't mean it that way. Maybe there was a problem with the way I expressed it, causing you to misunderstand. So now let's not get agitated. Let's calm down and talk openly, okay?" Young-E said softly. It seemed that it was the wish of many people that they could have an open and honest discussion and resolve the misunderstanding. Murphy actually wanted to have a good talk with Young-E. But when she thought about how this guy was so fierce to her, she pouted and thought, "Don't talk to this guy. Don't bother with him." Yes, she had to leave him hanging. She couldn't indulge his reckless character. The bedroom door was locked. Young-E twisted the doorknob but couldn't get in. After a while there was no movement at the door. Murphy couldn't take it anymore. She turned her head and felt wronged again. He only said a few words to apologize, and then he didn't say anything. "You're so patient with Shishi, but don't you care about me at all?" Although there was no need to be jealous of Shishi, and Murphy knew that Young-E was not mature enough in terms of relationships, she still felt stifled in her heart. "Hold on a little longer, and I'll open the door for you." Murphy had a thought in her mind. Of course, there was another thought that was competing with her. "No, I don't want to. Didn't we agree to ignore this bastard?" Plop! A strange noise came from the small balcony of the master bedroom. It was very loud, as if something had fallen, which gave Murphy a fright. She turned her head and looked over, only to see Young-E appear on the small balcony like a divine soldier descending from the heavens. He then clapped his hands and walked in. "I didn't hear any movement in the room. I thought something had happened to you. Thank goodness, thank goodness." Young-E heaved a sigh of relief when he saw her looking at his slightly swollen but still spirited eyes. How did you get here?" Murphy was stunned. Not to mention that he could jump from the balcony to the balcony. The large balcony in the living room and the small balcony in the bedroom were 6 to 7 meters apart. A normal person wouldn't even be able to jump 4 to 5 meters with a run-up. Young-E explained, "I came from the large balcony, grabbed the eaves and jumped a few times like this. It wasn't too difficult." Fearing that Mo-Fei didn't understand what he meant, he even made some gestures like a monkey flying around the tree. In fact, when Murphy saw that he was worried about her, the anger in her heart had disappeared without a trace. However, she still felt wronged, so she didn't want to pretend to be nice to Young-E. Therefore, when Young-E saw her sit up on the bed with a cold face and turn her head away, she didn't want to look at him. This feeling was just like when they first met. Murphy came to pick up her daughter, and the two of them didn't see eye to eye, so they simply ignored each other. However, Young-E didn't want to go back to the past. He liked to see Murphy smile. "I went overboard with what I said just now. I'm sorry." Young-E stood there and said in a low voice, "Just saying sorry is enough." Murphy turned her head away, pursed her lips, and said coldly, "You can do whatever you want or I can beat you up. I won't resist." Young-E said. Murphy snorted and didn't say anything. Young-E really didn't know how to deal with this kind of situation. He didn't know how to coax a woman, so the two of them were in a deadlock. Forget it. After a while, Murphy sighed secretly. She knew that Young-E wasn't the kind of guy who was glib, so she didn't wait for him to coax her. She turned her head, looked coldly at Young-E and asked, "You said that I looked down on you because of your low education, and that you're not qualified to be Shishi's papa. Why do you think so? Because you care about education. Seeing that Amofei finally spoke, Yang Yi could finally let go of the nervousness and hesitation in his heart. He quickly said, "You have talked to me about academic qualifications more than once, but why is academic qualification so important? Is education the standard to measure a person's talent?" Murphy understood. She glared at Yang Yi and then said, "I care about education, but I don't care about your education. I hope my daughter can get into a good university and get a higher education. Is that wrong?" Yang Yi was a little confused. "The reason why I care so much about education is that I've seen it. There used to be a senior who sang very well in the entertainment circle. Because he only had a primary school education, he was humiliated by the people of the Literature Association in a cross-industry event." Murphy clearly remembered the senior's helpless smile in a variety show, although he only said it as a joke. "I don't look down on you, and I won't look down on people with low education, but I hope my daughter won't be looked down upon," Murphy said. "Can you understand my difficulties?" So that was the case. The knot in Yang Yi's heart suddenly dissolved. He couldn't help but feel a little ashamed. He felt that he had misunderstood Murphy for so long. Even if his predecessor should take most of the blame, Yang Yi put the blame on himself. "I'm sorry, I misunderstood you." Yang Yi sighed softly. "If there's anything I can do to make up for the harm I've done to you, please tell me." He's still as honest as before. Who would admit their mistakes like this? Murphy didn't know whether to laugh or cry at Yang Yi's words, but she didn't want to laugh. She coldly asked the thing she had been thinking about for a long time, which was the reason why she called Yang Yi a bastard before. "I have another question. Why do you think I'm pretending to get along with you?" The author's words can't be put down. To answer some of your questions. 1. The protagonist has a high IQ and low EQ, but his low EQ doesn't lie in his usual behavior. Xiaohan remembered that there was a saying on the internet that people with high EQ are able to hold back the most hurtful words. Yang Yi is probably lacking in this. Put yourself in his shoes. Haven't you made the same mistake when you were in love? Of course, Xiaohan didn't mean that what Yang Yi did was right. It was best not to say hurtful words. 2. The discussion about education was just a consideration made by the characters from their point of view. It was just like each of them had their own opinions. Couldn't be said who was right and who was wrong. Just depended on the situation. As for Xiaohan herself, Xiaohan would tell others that education was very important and that they must get into a good university. But Xiaohan herself was very annoyed by others saying that she went to some university and came back to play computer games every day. It's better not to mention it. You're tuning in to the Whispers of Romance YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.